the Delaware Historic Preservation Commission. We have multiple items on the agenda tonight, but let's start with a roll call, please.
Ms. Herring?
Present.
Mr. Nicely?
Here.
Ms. Riviera?
Here.
Ms. Van Gundy?
Here.
Councilman Rohr? Vice Chairman Coleman?
Present.
Chairman Hatton?
Here. Believe Councilman Rohr has an excused absence. Could I get a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please, or call the vote.
Ms. Herring?
Yes.
Mr. Nicely?
Yes.
Ms. Riviera?
Yes.
Ms. Van Gundy?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Coleman?
Yes.
Chairman Hatton?
Yes. Second item on the agenda is the approval of the motion summary of the HPC meeting held on September 26th as recorded and transcribed. Has everyone had a chance to review those? If yes, are there any changes, corrections, edits? Seeing none, can we have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Please call the vote.
Ms. Herring?
Yes.
Mr. Nicely?
Yes.
Ms. Riviera?
Yes.
Ms. Van Gundy?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Coleman?
Yes.
Chairman Hatton?
Yes.
Thank you.
We have a couple of changes to our agenda tonight. We have some discussions and presentations in the interest of time, since those are fairly short, and because we may spend a little bit of time on our regular business items, I have asked that we move those forward. So we would start with the presentation from the Hayes Memorial Statue, and that is a presentation by Bill Reitz, Chair, the R.B. Hayes Commons Home Committee. Not sure how you guys want to step forward, please. Do they need to, do you need their name and address? Okay,
Yes.
if you could say your name and address into the microphone, please.
Where to put this?
It's all done, right, Bill?
That's right. Well, that's good. Bill Reed, 675 Pollyanna Drive, Delaware, Ohio.
Ted Miller, 41.
Appreciate the time. We are going to be brief in our presentation. In 2016, a committee was formed to recognize native son Ruther B. Hayes, who went on to be the 19th President of the United States. We have kind of ramped things up in the last 4 months. We are going to dedicate a statue in his honor, as well as educate the community on who this person was, his roots here in Delaware, and his impact on not just the state of Ohio, but also the nation. Got the wrong paper here, sorry. It is a grassroots committee. Delaware is one of only 43 communities in the nation that could say that they had a native resident go on to be President of the United States, claim the birthplace of a U.S. President. What you see are the members of the committee. We have been meeting regularly, and we're pushing forward to get this completed by October 4th, 2019. Why October 4th, 2019? That would be the anniversary, the 197th anniversary of Rutherford's birth here on East William Street. The location of the statue will be the southwest corner of Sandusky and William Street. The property owner will deed the space that includes the fountain, the 2 brick walls, and the flower pot area to the city, and the city will maintain the memorial that includes the statue and the fountain. Statue details. What you're looking at here is a 24-inch maquette of the actual statue that Ohio sculptor Alan Cottrell will, he designed it, and he will have that for us on October 4. It will be a life-size and a quarter statue, which would come to 7 feet in height. It requires waxing 1 to 2 times a year. That's all it takes. There's no kind of other work needed. It is going to require a 36-inch diameter by 32-inch deep concrete footer. Obviously, what you're looking at there is just an artist placement or graphic artist put it on the site. The statue will be placed on a 20-inch high, 32 by 32-inch block of polished black granite. And then on top of the granite will be a 7-inch plinth. And then the statue will be on top of the plinth. And all total, it is 10 feet, 1 inch in height from the base of the pedestal to the top of Rutherford's head. On the pedestal will be a bronze narrative plaque, R.B. Hayes, and then below that we are going to also have the presidential seal of his, at the time of his presidency, which included just 37 stars. That will be below the R.B. Hayes plaque within the polished black granite. That's the details of the statue. Ted's going to talk about
The fountain, we're just going to refurbish the existing fountain, basically raise the level of the pool up because it's really deep right now. We're looking at raising that up, putting in some bubblers. We don't want a big sprayer. We don't really want the fountain to overtake the fountain. The fountain is the focal point of the corner. So we're looking at just like 3 small bubbler fountains, possibly some lighting to go into there. The brick walls, like Bill talked about, they kind of be cleaned up. The other thing we talked about was the limestone caps that are out there now. We're looking at putting in some flags on either side to and frame the statue, of presidential flag and the American flag, and looking at possibly cleaning up those limestone caps or matching them with the concrete caps that go around the fountain right now. So we're looking at those options right now, see which one would work best out there. The Rutherford B. Hayes metal signage on each brick wall, that's the signature, right? So we don't have that on the drawing up there now, but that would be kind of the signature, the typical Hayes signature on there to kind of set that corner off a little bit.
Last but not least, you want to flip to the next one. Here's what Ted put together for us, shows the proposed plaza or memorial in the plaza. If you go over to the far left, you'll see a proposed donor plaque and Hayes interactive panel. That's an existing brick insert wall per se. It's 8 feet long, 4 foot high, and it's 2 foot. Oh, there we go. Ted's got it. And what we'll have in the alcove there, as you can see in the bottom left, will be those informative signs. Would be the biographical information about Hayes. And then on the back side will be a plaque recognizing the donors, citizens and businesses that have contributed different levels. And that will be on the south side of the wall facing the plaza. So we're going to make use of that brick insert that's been there since that plaza was designed by the property owner. That's it from us. We're willing to take comments or questions if you have any.
Commissioners, really quick, just in case you don't know, Ted Miller, who's our Parks and Recreation,
Should mention that.
Parks and Natural Resources Director, sorry.
And we'll be
and he's
taking-
on the committee as well.
Yeah, we'll be taking care of this fountain, so we partake in the planning.
Yeah,
Okay.
not we, the city.
yeah, we the city.
So I think for the commission, just, I guess, point of order, clarification, I know it's a discussion tonight, but if we read the guidelines and even the zoning code, we certainly could interpret this as probably exempt from development plan reviews and perhaps even HPC review. I mean, it is an external change that's going on in the environment, but we're looking for some guidance from you all as well, and they want to present it to you and obviously get any feedback at an early stage. But if you had any thoughts on if you needed to see feel like you need to see a formal application come back for this or not, we would love to know that as staff tonight too, so that we can guide the applicants, which includes ourselves, accurately.
I just had a quick question. So is the statue essentially going to be placed where the big flower is right now? Okay, so it will be sidewalk level
Yes,
and not at the lower level. Okay.
correct.
Yeah, basically replace that flower pot.
And the pavers will be taken out to do the stamped concrete.
Yeah, we looked at trying to do that circle. I should have mentioned that earlier, that circle of some stamped concrete just to kind of set that statue off a little bit on that corner at the ground level.
Well, as far as just, general comments, I think it's great. I think it's, kind of pitiful what we've had downtown in terms of commemorating, the home of a president, that was torn down in, the 20s. And I think this, especially for people that aren't that familiar with Delaware history, they come into town, to go to restaurants and just walk around. I think it's great to have historical, I think it's great, just having been, I think everybody's been into cities before where there are statues that, celebrate the history and give, context to, people that came from, those areas. And I just think this is a really cool project.
Well, I would agree. I think it's well thought out and just looks really good. It's a good addition to the downtown.
And I think the point that I was hinting at, but I didn't bring it up, is I guess I won't call it a mission statement, it's not, but it's a project to bring appropriate recognition to and educate the community about. Because every time I speak, I learn something new about Ruthven B. Hayes, and I enlighten people. Not that I'm an expert on Ruthven B. Hayes, but in the last 6 months, I've done more research on one person than I ever have before. And we have some teachers, when we approach teachers, they say, oh, there's no reason to recognize them. Well, we're in Delaware, so there's an education component that is going to be developed too, at no cost, obviously, but we're going to get an elementary, a middle school, and a high school element of who this person was and what he did into our young people.
One thing else to mention is the sculptor that's been chosen is a very recognized sculptor and has done a lot of good work around the country. Alan Cottrell, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's, Washington, D.C. everywhere. So he did this, so very good work.
He's out of Zanesville. We interviewed 4 sculptors right here in this room back in July, and each had 30 minutes to present their concept of what they could do on that corner, knowing the limitations. And Alan walked in that night. He had this in clay. He had a bust in clay, and kind of blew away the committee. But he's done other projects here in Delaware County as well as around the state and the nation, as Ted said. American Indians, military, as well as presidents. You guys are all there in Zanesville.
As the artist, does he recommend what the base looks like? Did he recommend?
Oh, yeah,
sort of
this is all,
base? Okay.
when the first meeting I sat in, everybody was saying, it should be this high, it should be this wide, it should be, up and down, off and down. And then finally somebody said, well, shouldn't we consult the professionals? And boom. So that's when we started contacting these sculptors, and they came in. This is Alan, he says 20 inches and 7-inch plinth, and he came up with this design. We sent a number of pictures that we got from Fremont out of the Presidential Library, and this is what he came up with. And to have him, he sat here and explained why he did the eyes the way they were, and the head or the hands. It's amazing. He did a great deal of research too into the person. So we've been blessed, I think, with our selection.
If I could, go ahead.
Okay. I just was curious, maybe a bit beyond the scope of our commission, but for the informational plaque that'll be on the south side of that little brick wall, what's your process for deciding what is placed onto that in terms of what history?
Well, we're going to go, and I know I might be speaking not out of turn, but part of our educational process is we put together a PowerPoint to go to youth groups, go to service groups, go to churches, whatever it might be, whoever will have us in to do the education component. It'd be from childhood, the role that Delaware played in his upbringing, and then his education, his military career, obviously what he did as governor and president, and then post-presidential work that he did. He became very involved in national and state affairs after serving one term in the White House. So it'll be born to his pseudo retirement.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, and kind of tacking on to that, again, it's certainly out of the purview, of the commission, but just one other thought is, not very far away is the county jail that was built in, I think, 1878. That was a direct result of, the prison reform that R.B. Hayes was, I don't know if chiefly responsible, but he certainly moved that along. And I think it would be great if somehow, the signage or the plaques can, somehow tie that in, because that's a beautiful piece of architecture, but it's also historically significant, and that really did represent a completely different way of approaching, how people were, jailed, and he really was a pretty big. He was very involved in that legislation and that movement. So I think that would be a really great tie-in for this.
Yeah, I noted that. That is one of the things that we bring up, his role in education, prison reform, as well as, as well as mental health care. So his sister in later life suffered from mental illness, and but his prison reform was huge on his agenda.
I had a question. I was actually kind of tagging on to Karis. Could you go back to where they have the statue photoshopped in? So my question is, this view is you're standing right in the middle of a very busy four-way intersection, and with it on such a tall pedestal, I'm 6'4", I can probably see it okay, but my daughter's 4 foot tall, and I kind of think of these more for the kids. And if you think we go to Savannah a lot, every one of the squares has a statue in the middle. You can walk up, you can read, but to really see the statue, you have to walk back. You have to walk back 10, 15 feet to really be able to see it, which you can't do here. And I'm not an artist, I don't want to step on toes, but just from kind of that perspective and scale, it seems too tall for that small area that you really have to view it.
That was the biggest thing that the committee had to work through was the height of the pedestal. Alan came to the site, not to bore you. I built a 28-inch cardboard box. I made a 7-inch plinth on top of that. Then I made a 7-foot cutout with signature signs of the actual statue. So I put all those three things together, brought it out there. We walked across the corner, or cat a corner across the street to in front of the coffee shop. We took pictures from using cell phones like most people are going to have. You put people on each side, and then you still could get the president as well as the people next to it. You didn't have to back into the street. As a matter of fact, you're about 3 feet from the curb itself. Now, could somebody figuratively, back up in the street? Obviously, yeah. Can we stop that? Probably not. But you're right. I mean, we didn't put a child up there. We were all adults. So, but
And
Scale-wise-
Ted, I think the
Scale.
I could be wrong, but I think the scale's off.
I think so too.
Quite a
That's
bit
what I
on
was-
this.
Sure.
It looks a lot
Right.
taller in
Yeah.
here than.
No, I know, but
Just
you
so
just, 10 feet is,
Yeah.
it seems like it's probably 11. Think for a basketball rim. That's so, that's pretty tall if you're, even for me, if you're this close. But,
Yeah, and I
the
think
brick wall, brick
yeah.
wall's 30.
Yeah, the height of the fountain, like that scale is off.
Sure.
That granite block is larger than it really would be.
Those brick walls are 30 inches high.
okay,
So the pedestal will be below the brick wall, or the cap, I should say.
okay.
And then you have the 7-inch plinth. Then, yeah, we're a low budget committee. We kind of self-imposed it on there, not to scale, and the artist said they goes.
You needed somebody under 20 on your committee to do it effectively.
We found a 28-year-old, but
That's
Does the commission have any feeling as to whether you feel you need to see a formal COA application come back for?
I would almost, just me personally think, unless it gets kind of hairy, when the final design's in, that to me, it seems like it could just be administratively approved.
Yeah, I would agree. I think public art falls into an unusual space, probably, unless it's advertising, which we clearly call out. I know we've got murals maybe next time to talk about. And we have had some buildings that have had art on the outside. So, yeah, I think administratively is fine. I don't think that this would need.
A few examples we've had, we've just kind of done at the staff level because they
Right.
feel like they fall within that.
Yep.
Okay.
I just have one question. Are you planning on doing like interactive things with the youth, like maybe on October 4th? like follow his footsteps kind of thing, to go off the history, just like the places he's been in the city?
Yeah, we're dovetailing off what the Historical Society put together in their Rutherford B. Hayes pamphlet. I don't know if you've seen those. They're available at the Historical Society. They have like locations around town. Sulphur Springs, where he met Lucy, his future wife. The William Street was currently the William Street Church, where the family moved. The house was under construction when he was born, and he moved there in 1823. And he grew up, that's where he lived until age 14. He went to school at the Murray School across the street, then the public school at the point where Andrew's house is now. He was baptized in the First Presbyterian Church. The building structure at the corner of Winter and Washington was not constructed at the time. They were meeting in homes or out in the Grove or at the courthouse possibly. But yeah, so we're going to have like a walking tour type thing set up. The city schools have agreed. The administration is supportive of the program we'll do in February on President's Day. So we're in the process of introducing that to the principals in December, and then taking their lead, we'll follow what they want us to do in the school. So we definitely want to interact. That's part of that educational component.
Some other things we've talked about is kind of a museum type at Willis, using classroom in there to have additional exhibits. Also, wasn't the bust going to be at the high school?
Yes, the bust, and I didn't want to carry that because it's a little more heftier than this thing. Alan also gave us a life-size bust.
Was that
I don't think it's on here.
Oh, it's in.
There it is. Well, no,
sort of.
you have it in your yeah, there it is. That will be permanently on display in the atrium of Rutherford B. Hayes High School. So when you walk in, that's the first thing you're going to see. Some of our monies are also going to go to in the atrium to put his career highlights, life highlights, up in the atrium, or up in the on the ceiling there, the walls. And what Ted mentioned, the district has also given permission for us to use the former library on the second floor of the Willis Educational Center. We have 2 members on our committee that are avid collectors of presidential campaign paraphernalia. They have 2 extensive collections, and so it'll be known as the Rutherford B. Hayes Center of American Political History. And it goes back to, not obviously Washington because it was just electoral college back then, but anyway, all the campaigns. And that way, that would be another educational component that could be open to the public as well. Will that be ready on October 4th? This is phase 1. We're taking baby steps, one step at a time. But and so we are trying to get something obviously into the high school and then educational programming in the elementary and middle school. But your idea of interactive activities is we've talked about it, but we haven't finalized as we push this through.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Awesome, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is another presentation/discussion, and this is a mural project presentation by Aaron Fletcher, Director of the Ross Art Museum.
Thank you so much for fitting me on the agenda this evening.
If you wouldn't mind your name and address for the
My name is Erin Fletcher. The address of the Ross Art Museum is 60 South Sandusky Street, Delaware, Ohio. I am also a Delaware resident.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm here this evening to give the HPC committee an update on a community engaged mural project, a public art project for Delaware, which is being spearheaded by the Ross Art Museum. Oops. Let me see. Well, it's a PDF, so.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thanks, Diane. That's great. So the Ross, just to give a quick overview, this was brought before City Council And the City Council requested that as the project moved forward, that we bring it towards HPC to keep everybody in the loop and updated about what was going on. So a quick overview is that we've proposed a series of community workshops that would result in 3 murals on buildings in Delaware, Ohio. We are working with a nationally and internationally recognized portrait artist and educator named Brett Cook, who has worked in many major museums across the United States, including the Smithsonian Galleries, who would be the lead on this project. Cook, his process, we have engaged him because his process foregrounds relationship building, facilitating community dialogue, bringing people together to ask what makes the community valuable to them, what is their vision of the community for the future, and who are the everyday heroes that make the community what it is today, and that we want to honor going forward. So the current plan is that we would have, again, 3 murals, 1 in downtown, 1 on the east side, and 1 in the Second Ward Community Center to represent many different parts of the Delaware community. The goal here is to just contribute to the cultural and artistic landscape in our community and to add vibrancy to key parts of Delaware that supplement and enhance the historic value of our town. Brett visited, just to say, it is my hope that this will be an opening for a further conversation about public art in this town in the future, and that this is part of the public art as it was called for in the master plan. And so that's just something that I'm here to try to support, see going forward. These are some examples just of community engaged projects that Mr. Cook has done in the past. He has, again, worked in a number of cities, and especially with a number of museums that work between campus and community, which is exactly what the Ross strives to do. If you could go to the next slide. Here are some examples of some of the portraits. This is in particular from a mural project done in Durham, North Carolina. That was a collaboration between the city of Durham and Duke University. This is the Polly Murray project. And I'm happy to talk more about these projects, but I want to be mindful of your time. If you'll go forward. Just another example of semi-permanent installations done in Amherst, Massachusetts. You can see that these were done again on temporary panels. So they were not permanent. If we could go forward. And here's just an example of the proposed timeline and a little bit about where we are right now. So Mr. Cook visited Delaware in October. We held the first presentation of his work at the museum at that time. We did take time to meet with both Dave and Diane, who were kind enough to give us their time to talk a little bit about historic preservation standards in this town. We did meet with members of Main Street Delaware and other city stakeholders. We do want to be mindful of our historic structures, and we understand that it's important not to paint on some of those historic things, such as exposed brick, which is not part of the plan. So we are currently exploring the Strand as our downtown site. We did visit and talk to the Strand board in October, and we are waiting on a decision back from them. We are also talking to the Second Ward Community Center, and I will be reaching out to the city about what sites on the east side might be potential sites. In terms of funding, we're currently at 50% of funding for this project, so we're just moving steadily forward. We're waiting to hear back on 2 more grants that we have submitted. And so again, we're proceeding as if this project will happen. And the next phase of this project would be another visit and workshops with the artist starting in the spring, which would then lead to the concepts and the drawings, which again, I'm happy to bring back in front of anybody that would like to see them. What questions can I answer? Does this help?
And quickly, Commissioners, again, I think this clearly falls within public art. Murals are exempt from review. They know not to paint brick that is otherwise not painted, so that's clear. And I think we talked about several of these sites you just mentioned, so I think that's exciting, at least from my perspective, that you're moving forward in that direction. I had an opportunity to meet with the artist, and he's pretty neat, very intelligent guy, and has done this all over. And I think the process is going to be almost as interesting as the outcome of the art as well.
So maybe you could talk about the Strand. Obviously, I don't expect you to come up with a fantastic Photoshop slide like our previous applicants did. But would it be hanging? Would it be a giant canvas? Would it be permanent in the sense that it doesn't change out, or would this be something that changed every 3-6 months? What's kind of the plan?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's on the side of the Strand that is that unpainted wall that faces the Gazette and those buildings and faces the parking lot. So currently there's a small temporary piece that's suspended on the side of the Strand. So there are a couple of options which we discussed with Dave and Diane. The museum does not have the bandwidth, and I don't think the city has the bandwidth to switch out a piece of public art every 3 to 6 months. It's just outside of our abilities. My hope would be that we could put a semi-permanent to permanent piece on the side of that wall that would be an attraction for the town, both a tourist attraction and a positive visual presence for people in the town.
Okay, so this is facing the parking lot essentially.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that wall is already painted, has some kind of stucco material on it, so it is not an exposed or a painted brick.
And thoughts on size?
So some of that will be determined. Some of that will be determined when we start drawing the concepts. Would you all mind scrolling back through to some of the pictures before? So to start here, I think this can give you an example of some of the sizes of things that have been done in the past. So definitely larger than life and visible at a distance. Can you go up one more slide up? Thank you. You can also see sort of here, if you think of that as, you can see the man in the top right-hand image next to the sign. You can see that the man is sort of, so if you're thinking that building's maybe 18-ish feet high, then you get a sense of that size. But the one that was done, Mr. Cook was one of the representatives of the United States that went over to Kenya and did some work there. And he did a full building size mural for his work in that capacity. So they've ranged in size. They're all larger than life, but whether that would be, a sixth the size of the wall or half the size of the wall, I think is to be determined.
Okay. And then if I understand the concept right, he's really acts more as the art director, and other people actually are he's going to direct the concept and let them do the details?
Let me clarify. So this is work different in different places. So for the budget that we're working with and the concept that we're working with here, the community process is really about bringing people together so the artists can understand what are the values of this town, what is the vision of the future for this town, who are the people that have made this town what it is. And it's really wonderful to sort of follow the conversation about the presidential sculpture, because many of us think of these people as nationally recognized heroes. Cook is actually interested in the everyday heroes that make the town what it is. And so the conversations with the community is really about figuring out who those people are that have touched a lot of lives. What I'm trying to say here is that the community conversations are about generating the ideas, identifying the people, identifying the values, so that the art is reflective of the values. But with the budget and the time frame that we have, Mr. Cook will actually be the one developing the artworks and then installing the artworks.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Just more of a comment than a question. I think you've already addressed this. I guess my first thought is, with projects such as this, is the first the overriding thing is do no harm. And I think it sounds like you are fully on board with that in terms of not painting unpainted brick, not doing anything to compromise the integrity of historic surfaces and things of that nature. And when I first, saw that on the agenda, that was my
Sure.
primary concern. And again, even though I think it sounds like you're fully on board when you've stated that, I just want to kind of put that out there that would, with respect to any type of mural, that would be my primary concern, is that wherever it ends up being and whatever materials that are used, that no historic fabric is disturbed, and I don't necessarily consider stucco historic, but I think it sounds like you are, in tune with that, but again, I think that's just such an important point that I wanted to just kind of be clear on that.
I think that's absolutely fair. And the thing that I would say back is that we want this to be a gift that supports the beautiful way in which this town is growing. So working with all of the work that you already have done around preservation of historic architecture and preservation of this town, we're just looking to enhance around arts and culture in a way that, again, benefits everybody without, taking away from any of the work that's been done.
No
Yeah.
questions, comments?
Well, I was in Quebec City this summer, and in their historic walled city, they have two of the most amazing 3 or 4 story murals. And I was really surprised at how many tourists were there getting their photos taken with the murals when everything around them is there that they could be taking their photos with. But they just detailed the history of Quebec City. It was fascinating. I'm really looking forward to this.
I appreciate that. And, I'll just add in here, we have other communities in Ohio that have really seen the benefits of public art. Bucyrus going in a more historical direction, but Cleveland going in a very contemporary-based art direction. And I think both of those cities have really benefited from those initiatives. So just to say that we're thinking out of the box for Delaware, but we're also thinking about being competitive with these other places.
I love the fact that you're actually taking the art elsewhere, like on the south side and east side too.
Thank you. We're excited to share it with you.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, that moves us to item 3 on the agenda, A, which is 2018-2725. Talked with Mr. Eflin. The applicants have asked to postpone that informal review until our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Well,
So-
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry,
Yep.
I was probably unclear. I think we just removed this from it may be a few months. So
Okay.
just remove this from your agenda and it will come back when they're
Okay.
ready.
Okay. And since that's an informal review, I don't think we need to table that,
No.
correct? Okay. Which moves us to B, which is 2018-3018, a request by the City of Delaware for an informal review for a City Hall Annex proposed concept plan for 20 East William Street, which is Zone B2, Central Business District, and located in the transitional subdistrict of the Downtown Historic District overlay. Since we do have some folks here tonight, I just wanted to explain, an informal review is simply what it sounds like. It gives applicants or business owners, property owners a chance to come before the HPC, float plans, talk, get some two-way communication going back and forth before they come, or not, but normally before they come in front of the HPC for then an actual formal request. So again, no action takes place tonight. It is just an informal review. We'll start with our staff review, and then we'll ask the applicants to come forward. So with that.
So this evening, in interest of time, and obviously it's the City of Delaware application, and we've just sort of gone over this site not too many months ago, so I think we're all familiar with the transitional district and the zoning and all of that. We'll dispense with that this evening. It's an informal review. Here with us is Jackie Walker. She's the Assistant City Manager. For those of you that don't know, be hard to believe anybody doesn't know that, but the project is a little bit different than was proposed before, and I think we're going about it in a little different way than it was proposed before, and we just like an opportunity to go over some of the reasons and some of the details and some of the things that have changed since the last review in an informal way, and receive any feedback that you might have as we continue to develop ideas and project parameters. So, Jackie, did you want to take it from there?
Absolutely, or else I'm happy to answer any questions. It's whatever the committee would like to do. I guess I'll jump in. Okay,
Go for it.
yeah. So the project that is being proposed for your input this evening is to take the property that 20 East William currently sits on and turning that entire area plus existing parking into a welcome center to our downtown and into our community. After Tom Homan was here, it was last September in 17, staff engaged the Robert Weather Company. We had some appraisals done of the building with and without spaces, if we would sell it, if we would lease it. And in the packet, in the memo that I wrote you to this committee, I give all the results. I give an executive summary of those results. The most crucial thing is that, as you know, this block is really taking off. And with the addition of Cohatch, moving the planning department over to 18 East William, we are anticipating that we are going to need additional public parking spaces, both during the day, evenings, weekends. By turning that area, that property, into a welcome center, we could increase the number of parking spaces that are there. And because you're going to have more parking spaces, we are able to create a safer driveway to get in and out of those parking spaces. Anybody that's ever parked back there, you take your life in your hands pulling in, especially pulling out of there. The sidewalks are right on top of you. You can't see really out into the streets because of the cars parked there. We would like to, we did, and I'm sorry that Ted Miller had to go. He was kind enough to do a conceptual plan for the Welcome Center, which is also included in the packet. Staff, just over time, different things we had heard people had said in our downtown area. Public restrooms, wanted a wayfinding device, an interactive wayfinding device so people could find out where they can get a good cup of coffee, where the banks are, different kinds of restaurants, Mexican restaurants, it's going to be very interactive. Downtown green space. We want to develop a cohesive walking path between the Welcome Center, the City Hall Annex, and City Hall proper. And then the possibility of putting an arch similar to what is going to be what is on Winter Street and is planned to be in the entertainment district of Winter Street here in the near future, possibly. So all that being said, we came up with a conceptual plan of what the Welcome Center would look like. After the first of the year, we are going to be using a citizen engagement tool to ask the citizens what would they like to see in a Welcome Center. And because, believe it or not, sometimes government officials don't know everything. So we're going to reach out to the citizens, and that was supposed to garner way more of a laugh, but whatever. So anyway, we're going to reach out, use this tool, find out what people really would like to see and what would benefit them, the downtown businesses, downtown property owners as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And
I think the only thing I would add to that is that, we cannot use this as a public parking lot now because of the narrowness of the drive. It just doesn't meet safety standards. We have attempted, and I think we reported this last year as well, we've attempted to work with our neighbors to the east to try to have some shared access and shared facilities and be able to get out to Union Street, and those, they just don't want to do that. For whatever reason, we think it could make a lot of sense in a partnership approach for both of us and solve some access issues here, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave.
We just don't have that opportunity at this time.
I have a question.
mm-hmm.
Are they still going to be designated spots for the Cohatch in this parking lot?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of the question.
Are there going to be designated parking spots for
Sure.
Cohatch?
Yeah, the agreement with Cohatch is that they get 5 of the spaces dedicated to them only.
So I guess my question would be, since the commission turned this down not too long ago, and in essence, we haven't changed anything other than maybe put a new name on it. So we've got, a new name. We left with the idea that you weren't going to pursue this.
Mhm.
And initially, the idea was, let's tear this cinder block thing off the back.
Mhm.
And yet there's no reference to that at all. So I'm a little surprised that we didn't at least reference that. Why?
Right.
Tell us the outcome. Why isn't
Sure,
that
absolutely.
apparently
Happy to do
possible?
that. And Mark, I did want to make a point that HPC never did vote on that proposal. It was tabled.
We did a informal, so yeah, it was not formal, but that's why it was
Okay.
tabled.
And then the rear part of the City Hall Annex is a valuable addition to, the Cohatch is going to be, is going to take over the basement and first floor. That's a very valuable space for them to use to increase, it's a maker space of sorts. And so we had decided, even if you just made that, if you chopped off the end, which ended up being valuable office space for them, you really didn't gain anything. It's still a very congested area. It's too close. The curb cuts are just way too close to each other, and that it just didn't make any safer situation particularly.
And you're right, Mr. Chairman. I think at that time last year, we hadn't finished the Cohatch design. We were still looking into that
Right.
potential option. Fast forward to now that, the lease has been signed and they're in there working. I know you guys haven't been in, but that
That's
space
done.
is all finished out.
They will be
They
done
shell
before the
down.
end of the year.
So it came to pass that that space was valuable to us.
Very valuable.
So that took that option off the table.
I guess, from my perspective, be that as it may, that didn't work out. The bottom line to me is, there are a finite number of historically significant buildings that essentially make downtown Delaware what it is. This is one of them. If you look at older pictures of downtown Delaware, there are a lot of buildings gone, even especially on this stretch of street. If you look at some of the historic early homes that were previously raised to make parking lots, including, well, not a parking lot, but raising the home of the former president across the street to put a gas station in. And I just think, this is a finite resource that we have. Parking lots, not so much. And once it's gone, it's gone. And I understand that it's not optimal for what you would ultimately like it to be, parking. But there's probably a number of downtown stakeholders that would feel the same way about any number of buildings in our core historic district that, hey, if I could knock this building down and put a parking lot next door, economically, that would make a lot of sense to me. But that's not, that's not the purpose of a historic district. And although, yes, a parking lot on this site would serve the city's, interests, perhaps short-term interests, maybe long-term interests more, that's not the point of having a historic district. The point of having a historic district is to preserve the historic fabric that makes it a unique place. And already when you come in on William Street, you're greeted by parking lots, a gas station. Sarah Moore knocked down a beautiful old Italianate house probably 10 or 15 years ago for more parking. And I just think it's terrible, and I think it's a terrible precedent to continue that. I think that was pretty much what people did in the 60s and the 70s, and I would like to think that we come to value these historic resources more now in the 2010s. I personally would vote against this.
So clarification, it's not just a parking lot. It is going to be a green space. It's going to be outdoor restrooms, which we hear a lot of complaints from our downtown business.
I understand.
And
I see the packet, and I saw you've got the Portland blue there. You've got this, you've got the interactive sign and a couple trees. But 90% of that is parking or more, I don't know.
Well, and those, I mean, those layouts could easily be put in the parking lot, city parking lot across the street, right? And the other thing, as far as a gateway entrance, you're coming into the city westbound on William. How many people want to make a left turn? It's a very difficult place to make a left turn. I don't see that. I get what you're doing. I understand packaging. I understand marketing. To me, you've just kind of polished this up a little bit, put some lipstick on it, called it something else, and brought it back in front of us. In my core, I agree 100% with what Mr. Coleman said. But the other thing is, it's a gain of 11 spaces at a cost of well over $300,000. When Tom was here last time, the numbers were much higher than that. And so we're $30,000+ for a surface parking space. Somewhere in here, I heard the term, want to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars. That is not a good steward of taxpayer dollars.
Well,
It's not. Let me finish, please. Not to mention the fact that we're now taking away any potential income from that space. If that were a restaurant, a bed and breakfast, anything else, you have people who work there. So you have the income tax that's paid. You have all those sort of things, not to mention just a benefit from downtown. You had mentioned earlier, the block is really taking off. It is. That's why that property should stay there. If the city can't use it, the city really, for the benefit of the city, right, for the greater good, should say, okay, let's go ahead and sell this. Let somebody develop this into a vibrant business, which would really help that whole area. So to me, to tear it down, as Mr. Coleman said, that's 1960s thinking. I can't get past that. I don't care how many trees or Portland lilies we put in. We're tearing down a beautiful structure that could easily be reused. And I will continue with the argument, we would not let a private owner do this. The city's in front of us asking for something that we would not let a private owner do. And I completely disagree with that. I think it's a terrible precedent to set.
I agree with you 100% also. I think I've been to a lot of historic districts, and some of them are wonderful, but then also a lot of times you end at the historic district and then you're in a strip mall or restaurant row. But there are some wonderful towns that don't. Charleston has a huge historic area that goes on and on and on. So I think we have to be very careful to protect the transitional area, even if we go a little beyond the outlined transitional area, to create and keep that flavor of the historic district, and to tear it down essentially for parking spaces and a porta-john. It is insane to me. The trade-off is just ridiculous. I don't understand. Has the city ever considered just going across the street and using making some of those parking spaces city use for Monday through Friday, 7 to 7 or something like that? They're never filled. That's hardly ever filled during the daytime. I would have to vote against it too, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I could just, obviously, I think it is a complicated issue. We know that City of Delaware has grown. I think by last June, we had something around 400 new home builds. And it is a growing city. I think we have to understand that. And I certainly respect that we need to keep certain things in the downtown. But I listen to the comments that have been made here. And notwithstanding that this is a complex issue, it is one structure. But much like it was brought to us a year ago, my sense is that this hasn't really changed much. A year ago, they said, hey, we want to tear down this structure. We can call it a welcome center, but really it's 2 trees, a digital sign, and a portable bathroom, and 31 parking spaces. And I don't really see any substantial change. And I understand the City Hall Annex needs parking. But when you look at our comprehensive parking plan, we look at the other options that are potentially developing around the downtown, it seems like those might solve that problem and still save this property so that we can find some other use for it, maintain the physical presence of this historic structure versus a relatively dead space. 2 trees in the front don't really make it a green space in my mind. And so I would be I mean, I can't say yes or no until I saw a formal application, but I'm skeptical about the utility of it.
Anyone else?
I was actually trying to look up the value. I know DPS, that building just sold recently. Sorry, and I was not the agent on that sale, so I know it was listed for $500,000 when I showed the building. So I can't find the sold price. To me, and a real estate point, I could see a lot of interest in this building. A lot of actual residents are looking for downtown investments, though this isn't in the core district. I still see a lot of entrepreneurs looking for space in their hometown to enhance or bring business. And I think it would be a cool, I see both sides, and I've seen this article posted on Facebook last night, watched everyone's comments, kept my mouth quiet, because I wanted to see everyone's point of view. I've seen some fellow residents, like the idea of the parking lot. And yes, they were sad that a building would be destroyed. And then you had a lot more upset people and, referencing the BP station that's now national news sometimes due to our president. So that all being said, I love the idea of possibly selling the building and putting that for sale. That would be my proposal. I know I don't have much say in there, but I could really see someone paying close to, maybe $300,000 for that property and investing in it. I know DPS was like 500 and they needed like $1 million plus in renovations to make that building actual walkable. So, I mean, I see that it could be a really nice enhancement to the entry of Delaware City, keeping that building.
If I could add to the comments that have been made here is, as I said, I see both sides of the issue. I think it is a very complex issue. The city has gone to considerable lengths, I think, to work with us, and we, in turn, have worked very well with the city in recent projects over the last 2 years. Not the least of which being the old Gazette building that is now partly public, partly Cohatch, the Skywalk, various other efforts that have been brought before us. And I think leaving here tonight with this informal review, I would like to make that clear that we're not trying to be an obstructionist body to what the city needs. I think I speak for a lot of us. When we recognize the city has needs, we're a growing city, and we need to keep that concentrated in the downtown, just like we do the historic fabric of our city. I think as this project develops into a formal proposal, I would simply just request that the city take these ideas into account. That we have a mandate as an Historic Preservation Commission, and that is to hold on to what is unique and special and precious about our downtown, and allow us to have that conversation. What other options are there? I mean, when we're talking about the finance, we're talking about the real estate values, we're talking about locations, but this does not exist in isolation. There are other places for parking. Maybe we can look at other options. If we sell this property, can you then turn that money back over to improving the quality of parking somewhere else that would serve the same function? Any number of things, but I think I would just put that out there to encourage the city government, the city staff to really explore those options more broadly so that we can try to find an appropriate compromise that realizes our growth, but also allows us to maintain that historical quality that we value.
And I was not part of this conversation last year, so I appreciate hearing everybody's points of view. I do want to acknowledge that I do think the city has been very thoughtful in what they've done with the Gazette and the Cohatch project. And this is not an easy decision. I've actually been involved in other conversations and projects looking at this site. It is a very difficult site to deal with. But yes, there's a lot to think about. I'd have to decide, or I'd have to think more to understand what my vote would be. But knowing that there is a lot of growth going on in Delaware, property values are high. What are the possibilities for this building? I think that because of the growth, you guys, the city has been creative. I think there are creative opportunities for this building as well. It is a difficult situation.
Okay. Dave, Jackie, did you want to
Appreciate the feedback.
respond?
I
or-
think that's what
Okay.
we came to look for. I don't know if you have any other feedback, Jackie. I'd just say, I mean, from my perspective as the development director and picking up on something, a theme of Mr. Nicely's and sort of looking more broadly, I do think it really is a shame that we can't get a little bit more attention to what I think could be a broader solution with our neighbors to the east there. And I'd welcome any help in that regard from anybody that might be here or listening here to try to have a sort of a cooperative approach towards maybe a shared parking space and a safe way to get maybe in through the existing alley and out through Union Street. But it just we haven't been able to advance that conversation at all. And there's been a lot of effort, I think, on our half in that regard. So, Jackie, I don't know if you have any other.
Nope, I have nothing else.
Since we do have a lot of folks here, and this is an informal review, so it's not an application. If anyone that's out there would like, please come up. And again, your name and address at the microphone, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Larry Vance. I live at 188 North Franklin Street, Delaware. And in response to the assistant city managers, I are a citizen. And I would like to share some thoughts with you. First of all, I guess I want to establish some level of credibility. I spent about 2 decades working on the facades of a lot of the historic buildings downtown. I do historic masonry restoration. In fact, I'll give you a card and pass them on down. In the process, I've come to know a lot about the city of Delaware and certainly a lot about the buildings around here. But I would like to speak directly to the Welcome Center and express a concern, first of all, and then simply reinforce a need. As I said, I do historic masonry restoration, and I find many a time that as I'm out working on the street, a lot of people, pedestrians, come up and ask directions, information, and so on. The most common question I receive is, where is the public restroom? That's a commonly asked question, and I've talked to many of the merchants about this. And I always hear the same response. Yes, we have some. Yes, we are abused in the process. People come in, use their restrooms, don't buy anything. Others commonly even receive gifts from Main Street in form of toilet paper, etc., during heavy use times because they see the burden that these people are being asked to take on. I think I've heard of a lot of people downtown. I've talked to people, residents, who say, we don't want to come downtown. There's no access to public restrooms. Physically, there's limitations as well as the ability to even find one that receives the public other than a customer. Several months ago, I met with council in this regarding this need, and I expressed that as they talked about the potential of this district that they were to establish for liquor use, etc. And I said, you're only compounding the problem that already exists. The solution was to bring in a huge porta-john on wheels. So I took it on myself, I guess, to take a look at what options there might be. One I suggested at the time was the Sheets building and its possible modification and use as a public restroom, at least in the front, and the remaining part of the building could be really utilized in a number of different ways. It seems to me a bit of a shame that we're going to go for less than a dozen parking spaces to tear down a building such as that, which I agree with most of you that says historic fabric is important. If we continue the path to destroy our downtown fabric, and we're doing a pretty good job. If you look at the front porch, it's demolition by neglect at this point, because the city has really done nothing in the last couple of years to do anything to work with that building. Then at least we should do more than for a dozen parking spaces. I'm a little disturbed as I bring my concern to you about the need for public restrooms to find this, what you call a Portland loo. Portland to me means cement, but I've heard it discussed as a porta-john. So I did my homework. I'll bring to you some pictures. These are 3 downtown public restrooms, men one side, women others, many facilities within either side. I'll leave that with you. I also, nice big sign where the public restrooms are located, and then Delaware's solution to that problem at this point. That basically concludes my concern, but I do appreciate that at least it got on the agenda this time, that we have some form of a public restroom, albeit, is that a one-holer?
Not sure we've determined how many holes.
Well, did you have to go to Portland to find that out, or?
This won't be a historic restroom at home.
What if
Not sure.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
I just don't want there to be any misunderstanding. This is not an outhouse. It is a physically operable running water bathroom. It is by no means, there's no holes or anything in the ground.
I think you're asking how many stalls there would be.
Facilities are available
Again,
at a time?
You know, and that's the thing, is that this was just a concept plan, so we didn't really get down to the nitty gritty. I mean, so
Okay, but from the concept plan, the trees are bigger than the facility, leave alone. I'm not sure, what is the buff space that's behind Cohatch? Is that a green space or?
Behind, between
it's-
Cohatch and William Street? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, no, that's okay, I'm sorry, that's in
the
front of,
patio.
I'm sorry. I stand corrected on that.
But
Okay.
I would also comment that at least, you know, and again, I understand that's not necessarily what you were going to put in there, but the little JPEG and the thing there, yeah, it's not a porta-john, but it certainly looks like it's related to a porta-john. And I do like, you know, pictures that Mr. Vance provided. I think that actually, you know, if, you know, some space could be carved out in one of the public parking lots, you know, for something like that, I think that would be a heck of a better way to welcome people to Delaware than, you know, what's up on the screen right now.
Well, you may wish to speak with some communities that have done such, and I did. When I took those pictures, for example, Grand Rapids, Ohio, you'll find that not only do they operate those, they're operated by donations. There's a donation box out front. Down near Lebanon, the same thing. A number of communities do that. And again, these have heaters, you know, the whole works there. It's a public year-round facility that's available, and that's a major need in this community, not just for events, such as bringing in a trailer with, as was done once. So again, I leave that concern. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Has the
Thank you.
city thought of I know the renovation cost of like $200,000 for that building, but renovating for public restrooms inside that first floor, and then like a mother's room where they can go breastfeed or do whatever they need to do. And then,
Consideration.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions, and what a lot of people don't want to face the fact about is when you have a structure, outdoor structure that isn't actually staffed, that introduces a lot of, to be polite, nefarious characters.
do you think that you'll have that with the restroom as
No.
well?
Because that is, if you see the style that we looked at, we went to Portland, we wish we would have gone, but we called Portland, Oregon, and they have these all over, and it actually, because of the way it's styled, it doesn't introduce somebody to want to set up camp there. It gives enough visibility so if a child is in danger, it can be easily spotted from outside.
It's more defensible space.
It's a very
into
defensible space.
A structure.
And so that's why we've kind of shied away from using that building as any type of facility like that, because just the question of how to staff it.
Well, could you have
we don't-
childcare too? I
I'm
mean,
sorry?
could the city offer childcare and that would be like staffing of the
Our,
building?
the city's insurance, we
going out
certainly
to
can
eat.
go, excuse me?
Just, idea like family or date night. Hey, well, let's use the childcare that the city has. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think that would be a better
anything's
feature.
possible. There's just, there's a price for that. Right now, our insurance would not allow us to be child caregivers. But certainly if that's something that the community, like I said before, I have been with the city a very long time, and I'm always interested to see what people are willing to use their tax monies for, or what they want to see develop. So, but no, that's exactly why you want to restrict the kind of facility. Unfortunately, in our day and age, we have to protect each other, and especially those that can't defend themselves. And that's where you have to build a structure like this.
Is there anyone else in the audience that want to speak? Okay. Aaron, did you have something?
I did have one additional comment from Ms. Walker. Really, two related, one of which is recognizing the protective nature and the need for security around structures, public restroom facilities and the like. In the interest of being constructive here, if you come back, I would be very interested in knowing what you can do with whatever facility you're going to go with, if there's a way to make it have a bit of an historic feel to it, so it's not just a very modern cinder block building, essentially. Right. The other question, though, is more of a fundamental question, is if we're talking about putting a welcome center where there is a digital wayfinding sign, possibly this arch that replicates similarly to the one on Winter Street and so forth. What is the city's thinking on how you're going to alert people that there's a welcome center here in the first place? Because once they're here, they're already downtown. So is there some way that would be able to direct people to know that there is this place here that is a welcome center before it's up, kind of beyond the point?
Technology is the, I obviously have not thought of everything, but what we would like to do as we move through our parking plan, which a number of you have referenced through this, which is one thing they've asked for, is more parking, is that we want to be able to have a register in our parking areas to let them know, so somebody comes into our city or headed to Delaware, what's available. Well, you're going to be able to see this interactive map on an app on your phone that will say Welcome Center. The other idea is that if the interactive maps are helpful and popular with our downtown visitors, then we would like to see them in a number of different areas downtown and in the parking lot. So when people get here, if they're like, you know what, I'm kind of turned around, I'm not even sure how to get to Amado's, okay? They can figure that out by just jumping on one of these maps. We'll brand it, and so it'll register with them. So we're going to have to use a technology a lot more than what we do now, which we're getting there.
The interactive wayfinding maps are part of the wayfinding plan overall that we've executed some of the signs. It's sort of phase one, but this would be other phases as well. And part of that plan included kind of You Are Here maps or interactive wayfinding maps, particularly around the parking lots. So once we can get you to a parking lot, get you out of your car, and then you're walking and you're a visitor, am I going to Shops and Dining? Is there a comfort station over here? Selby's over this direction, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you.
I have to say it's a little confusing to me to call this area a welcome center. And so I have a traditional image in my mind of the welcome center, which is a building. We have a building there that I want to make a welcome center that you walk into. And there's a history about Hayes and the Welcome Center. And the wayfinding I also know is important, and I know there are new technologies, but I also don't imagine walking down there to use them. It seems like those would be at Sandusky and Williams intersection. So there are two different kind of conversations going on, and I think they're almost different things.
Well, we were thinking about using that area as maybe a pilot program for our interactive map to see how well it's used. And then, we're a little hesitant about putting something like that right on the corners because we have a lot of trucks that go over those curves. And so that's why we thought maybe doing the parking lots might be a good way to start. And then maybe we can do something like inside some buildings. I don't know. I mean, that's much further down the road, but it was kind of like a nice pilot program, we thought.
And your point is well taken in that the wayfinding plan included these kind of opportunities around our parking lots once you're out of your car and pedestrian, which I think makes some sense.
Yeah.
But also then on Sandusky, maybe even Winter Street, there were some at least placeholders. We didn't specifically identify where they might go, but there might be other opportunities to your other point.
Right. And I acknowledge that I live in the city, so I'm coming from the office. I don't have that experience. Of
You know where you're
coming-
going.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't even have that.
Or I have my own
experience of
interactive
coming-
maps.
Right,
That's-
right.
Well-
Coming in and finding a parking lot.
I know
on that
Jackie
side.
said it would be a combination, but not everybody's as savvy on this. A combination of those things seems to be the preferred approach of a lot of communities.
Okay. Anything else on this? We've got another one on the agenda that may take a while. All right. Thank you, city staff. All right, back to the agenda. Under regular business, 3C 201828885, which is a request by Delaware Hotel Associates LLC, DBA Fairfield Inn & Suites by Marriott, for a certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of an existing structure and construction of a hotel at 53 and 0 East Winter Street, which are zoned B3, which is Community Business District, and located in the transitional sub-district of the downtown historic district overlay. These are going on. Staff, do you have a report for us, please?
Yes, I'd like to go through the basic staff report first and then invite the applicants to do their presentation and then follow up with staff analysis and comments from the commission. As you had indicated, let's see. The project is located at 53 and 0 East Winter Streets, which is the northeast corner of the intersection of Union and East Winter. The zoning is B3, which is the Community Business District. And the site is located in the transitional sub-district of the city's historic district. And then this is an aerial of the general project site. Some background, the overall project area encompasses approximately 9 parcels of the southern half of the block bounded by East Central Avenue, to the north, US Highway 23 north on the east, East Winter Street on the south, and North Union Street on the west. There are 2 existing buildings in that block right now. The City of Delaware Justice Center at 70 North Union. And then in the southern part of that block is the PNC Bank drive-through building at 53 East Winter. And then these are photos of the existing buildings in that project area. And the project area has transitioned, of course, throughout time. We have illustrated here the Sanborn fire insurance maps, which provides a very good indicator of how that particular area has changed over the last 100-some years. And the area transitioned from a predominantly residential area, and currently, as a result of the construction of the Justice Center, the paved areas and parking the paved parking areas and driveways were installed in 1992, and the area has remained the same for approximately 25 years. Now, the applicants, as indicated, are proposing to construct a 5-story, 104-room hotel with a banking office and a small commercial area, and also a detached public parking garage. The applicant had retained an architectural firm to study the existing architecture in the area, and the new hotel design influences were the Allen Hotel, which is circa 1800s, the Hotel Blee, which is actually kitty corner from that site, and it is currently the Wintercrest Apartments. And as you can see in the photographs, the two buildings are essentially, have maintained its architectural character over time. And then lastly, the Ohio Living Sierra Moore facility, which is south of the site. And in addition, there's also a nod to the Rutherford B. Hayes building at 140 North Sandusky, which was built in 2001, and also the new Delaware County Courthouse built in 2017, which is a few blocks over on North Sandusky Street. And at this point, I would like to turn it over to the applicant to do your formal presentation.
Before we could do that, if commission members have any questions for city staff before we go into that.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of comments. I just say thank you to Mr. Jacobson and his team for interest in City of Delaware, and this project's obviously complicated, involves some city property and a parking structure. I think we've talked a little bit in generalities about this before this evening. Obviously, you've just dealt with this year another hotel and proposal in downtown, and in fact approved that through the Historic Preservation Commission. There's much more process to go for that one as well. And they pursued an informal approach followed by a formal approach with you. These applicants have chosen to follow this approach with you, and we tried to spend a little bit more time with them, I would say, and suggest to you as staff, as a result of coming forward just as a formal application, as opposed to maybe the last one you saw, which was pretty informal to begin with. I think it became very formal. So the city hasn't, for our part, we haven't committed to the financing or any of this yet. Those discussions are ongoing. There were some more today. That obviously is a complicated portion of it, but much like your last hotel project, obviously the design and the site design, the materials, all of the things that you all look at will influence not only the way it looks and is in our community, but the overall cost of the project. And so that has to be accounted for in some of these other discussions as well. So it makes sense to, again, start with the Historic Preservation Commission for what's sought to be a formal approval here this evening. But I know they have a presentation to give you as well, and they've been working hard on this, and they come from out of town, all different places, so we'll let them get to it. Unless commissioners have questions.
I can name and address for the record.
Certainly, absolutely. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Bill Jacobson. My office address is 105 South Narcissus Avenue in West Palm Beach, Florida, where it's about 40 or 50 degrees warmer than it is here tonight. My other partners are here, and I will introduce them to you in just a few minutes. Before I begin, I would like, and you took the words out of my mouth, Mr. Eflin, I'd like to thank Dave and the members of his staff and Diane, with whom we've worked very closely. Also like to thank Mr. Hughes and Mr. Holman. I think Sean may be here. We have worked very closely with the members of the City of Delaware. At least we've tried to over the last several months. We've made many trips here, the last couple of which were aimed at looking very carefully at the design criteria for the hotel and to chat a little bit about how it might be appealing to the members of the Historic Preservation Commission. And it is correct that we have endeavored to bring this project forward to you tonight for an approval rather than just for a review. And the reason is that we have tried to do our homework before appearing before you tonight. We think we're prepared for whatever questions you might have for us, and we've brought lots of colors and charts and other things that we want to present to you. So that all having been said, I just want to say that I broke my regular glasses, so we're going to stay awake tonight looking at my red cheaters. So anyway, we are Delaware Hotel Associates, and we are, although we are not DBA Fairfield Inn and Suites, I just want to make sure that the record is correct. We anticipate building a Fairfield Inn and Suites on this property. That is the flag that we've chosen to move forward with, and that's what our position is as far as that's concerned. You know where the property is located. Part of this property is owned by the City of Delaware. Part of it is owned by PNC Bank, so you may hear some references to PNC Bank. We actually met with PNC today to further our discussions with them and see how they're going to be integrated within the project. As described by Diane, who did a great job on this, the project does consist of 104 rooms in a 5-story configuration. The bank is going to have about approximately 3,000 feet, and we'll have about 12 to 1,500 square feet of local retail, local commercial, a coffee shop or other things like that for members of the hotel or for guests at the hotel and people who are working within the bank. The parking garage is going to be, it's not going to be separated. There's going to be a demising wall. There'll be a fire-rated demising wall between the hotel, the bank, and the garage. And ultimately, it will be, just so that the record is straight, ultimately it will be owned most likely by the city, and it will be actually connected to, but on a separate parcel from where the hotel and bank is located. I just want to make sure that the record is straight. As far as the design is concerned, we are integrally involved with the city as far as creating the design of the garage, making sure that it's consistent with what the hotel design is going to look like, so that there's no appearance that there's any difference between the two structures. And it's interesting, I heard some talk earlier about, with the Ross Museum over here, about doing some murals and things like that. We've actually talked about allowing the possibility of there being some murals on the side of the garage, because we don't like ugly garages, and we want this one to be accepted within the City of Delaware. In order to have a really good project, I think it takes an exceptionally good team, and we believe that we've put together a good team for this presentation and for the development of this hotel. On the board here before you is a summary of who we are and what we do, and you'll note that S&M Development is two of my partners make up S&M Development. And they have combined 92 years of real estate experience in construction, marketing, and hospitality, including the actual ownership and development of hotels. And then another of our partners, Paul, sitting behind us. Brian is not here tonight, but Paul has about 30 years of hotel experience. We are all involved in development and have been for many years. I'm the last guy on the list. 45 years of real estate, financing, title insurance. I'm a real estate lawyer and land use lawyer from Florida. and a proud graduate of Ohio Wesleyan University. So this to me is a real pleasure being back in town, and I'm looking forward to getting this project out of the ground. I graduated at a very young age, so it's not going to tell you what year I went through the project. I think it probably would be important if we move through the background of our guys, unless you have any questions about our background and who we are and what we do. This is a project that Brant and his partners are involved with. A couple of examples of some of the hotels that have been developed. These are not what our hotel is going to look like, but we want you to understand that they have significant hotel experience. So it's not as if this is a one-off or our first one out of the ground. But these are several of the brands, especially you can see the Marriott Courtyard, and our brand of choice will be a Marriott. Commonwealth Hotels, represented by Paul back here, has many years, 40-odd years of experience in the management of hotels all around the country. And this is, although you can't read it, and I'm not going to read it for you, this is a list of all the hotels that are under management or have been owned by Commonwealth through the years in the states in which they are operating. So currently operating, right? Which are currently operating. There obviously may have been some others that they've had through the years, but it's a substantial resume of hotel experience. So let's get on to our next one. Some other examples of hotels, those under construction and development. I'm doing this because I think it's important that you do understand, what our team consists of. Okay. This is an example of what a Marriott Fairfield Inn and Suites would look like. We're only showing you this because this is it's actually a 4-story configuration, and there are certain elements of the hotel which will be incorporated into our hotel, although made to look consistent with what's being required by the City of Delaware and the Historic Preservation Commission. But certain of the elements which you'll see in our hotel are going to be consistent with this. Okay, now here is our hotel. Now, please understand that the first version of it. By the way, the one or two of the pictures that are in here have been updated in terms of the site plan and the operational aspect of the hotel, and we'll show you where they are. They're very small changes on it, but this. Understand, please, that the colors that are on this hotel now are not the colors we're proposing to you tonight. I mean, the brick colors and things like that. This is strictly for elevation so that you can see what the hotel is going to look like. We have brought color charts with us tonight and actual samples of the actual brick and things that we're going to be using tonight. But you can see the lower level, first floor level, is separated from the upper levels of the hotel. There are certain bits of relief in the hotel in terms of where the hotel steps out in certain areas. And then there are a couple of elements that the brand, when I say the brand, I mean Marriott and the Fairfield brand requires. And you can see right by the front door, there's some stonework. We're going to show you how that integrates into our hotel, but these are certain things that the hotel requires. And what we're going to do is to integrate those requirements into the hotel that we're proposing for you, for your consideration tonight. Shall we?
This is the current version.
Yeah, that's the current version of what the elevation looks like, but the color is not the same as. Yeah, exactly. All right.
The things that
give your name.
Yeah, I'm Brant Niehaus with S&M Development, one of the partners. 13121 East Point Park Boulevard, Suite B in Louisville, Kentucky. This particular rendering is the one that we're proposing. We've added a cornice to the top. We've added some features around the windows that gives it a little more historic look. And this is all based on our previous discussions with the city when we were here a couple months ago. But our attempt is to give it a little more of a historic look with those kind of edgings.
We have the way in which we've reached our, I'll call it the look of the hotel, We've studied, obviously, all of the buildings that are surrounding the area, the residences, some of the other buildings there. In an effort, we've taken tons and tons of pictures, sent them to our architect. When we were choosing the colors that we're going to be using in the building, all of those pictures were taken into consideration when deciding on the brick colors and things like that. So we have spent an awful lot of time and effort doing this. This is a site plan basically of the hotel. To the left corner, you'll see it says coffee shop in the lower left-hand corner. That's basically along Winter Street, what was, as you may know, used to be called Witter Street many years ago. Anybody know if anybody knew that, actually? You don't know?
Nobody's been around.
Nobody's been around as long as I have. That's exactly right. Anyway, many, many years ago, that's what it was called, Witter Street. But anyway, so the coffee shop is basically to the right-hand side of the entrance to the hotel. You can see it says hotel lobby. The bank is located between the coffee shop and where the parking garage will be located. And then the parking garage is the building to the right-hand side. Just so you're totally oriented, the road that goes back on the far right-hand side is commonly referred to as Cruiser Alley, but it goes back to the Judicial Center, which is to the top of the picture. We've given a lot of consideration to the parking for the judges and other people who use the Judicial Center, and we've set back the building sufficiently, so there'll be a couple of rows of parking behind the building. It's about, I think, 50 feet of setback between the edge of the parking and the Judicial Center, which...
Yeah, don't get distracted by the lines going at an angle from top right to bottom, because the parking would be the other way as you come in to the drive.
Yeah, that's...
Okay. I think the architect just drew that as a shaded area for the judicial parking that exists there already.
The bank currently has a drive-through on the property, and we are obligated not only to create the retail bank of 3,000 feet, but the bank wants to utilize a drive-through in that area, wants to have one on the facility. So we've taken a portion of the parking garage in the lower right-hand corner and created a modern-day drive-through. I mean, they don't have tellers in the drive-throughs anymore these days. They have screens, and they're more like an ATM machine. So that's really what it's going to be, is a drive-up ATM machine. People who come into the garage for the purposes of using the ATM will not be obligated to pay to go into the garage. There's a bit of a separation there. They'll come into the garage off of Winter Street, take a right-hand turn, go to the ATM, and then back out onto the street. So that element, that little bitty element right there, is being worked on with the bank to make sure that that PNC is happy with the way that operates. But we've shown that to the city, and we believe that that would be an acceptable alternative to this. And it separates the driveway from Cruiser Alley going back to the Judicial Center, so there's no impact on police, fire, and public safety in that area. Shall we go to the... This is a typical suite level. This is all internal and probably really doesn't impact our presentation tonight. This is the elevation, south elevation of the building, basically along Winter Street. And you can see the hotel to the right, the PNC Bank in the middle, which is, by the way, a one-story configuration. And then the hotel, which appears to be, I'm sorry, I apologize. The parking garage all the way to the right. The parking garage is actually 4 stories, and there's a substantial elevation change in the property itself from Union and Winter all the way to the east towards 23. So we really intend to take advantage of that as much as we can to keep the parking garage appearance-wise lower than what the hotel is. And you should also note that in terms of the tree canopy that's along 23, basically the garage will be at or below the level of the tree canopy, so that it's not going to be a situation where it impacts anybody's view coming into town. It'll actually be relatively attractive coming in from that direction when you see the the garage and the hotel. This is
That's
the,
the view from
east elevation,
23.
yeah. Showing the bank, hotel. With the signage, we understand that the elements, one of the conditions of our approval tonight requires that we either come back before you or work with staff to get our signage exactly the way you want it. We consent to that element. There are some brand requirements. Number one, PNC has a requirement. We do understand that in terms of lighting of the signs, it's extremely important. You know, we won't have anything that's going to be obnoxious to or antagonistic to the requirements of the Historic Preservation Commission or any of the standards of the city. But we just want to let you know that, first of all, we consent to that requirement, but we will have signage on that side of the building coming into town.
Quick question, is the signage internally illuminated or externally?
You mean backlighted?
Well, internally, so a plastic front with lights inside versus lights shining on a static sign.
Yeah,
because that's not allowed in the district.
It's not.
What's not allowed?
Internally.
Yeah, you can't have an
signs.
internal or backlighted sign. There's got to be external. We have an LED lighting package that we've talked about in our application that will assist in illuminating those signs. But we're not going to have a bright, obnoxious sign.
Right, I get the bright, it's just internal or external.
Yeah, so when you say it's an LED system, is it essentially, whatever material, I mean, is it basically where it says Fairfield, for instance, are those like, aluminum letters mounted to the building that are spot lit with LED, or how is that? I mean, how does the LED package?
Well,
It's Paul Stanton.
Marriott, yeah, Paul Stanton from Covington, Kentucky. Marriott has different sign packages, and they've done a lot of hotels in historic places. So I think we can accommodate whatever we're going to need to accommodate. We'll need a full understanding of exactly what the requirements are and what you're really looking for, and then we'll get with Marriott, and their designers will come back with something that will please everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the basic, it just can't be internally illuminated. It has to be externally illuminated, which means a light shining on an unlit sign.
I was aware of that. I mean, I've watched many of your videos and I've seen the requirements. I'm sorry. Right. It's nice to see you all in person, by the way. I wanted to say, but not the videos. I mean the YouTube deals. But I've noted that requirement in other situations. So we will be consistent with that. I mean, we'll have to make that commitment to you, and we'll work with the brand in terms of illuminating the sign.
Just so everybody's clear from the staff perspective, I think we've made that very clear to the applicants before they arrive tonight what the requirements are. It's pretty straightforward. It can't be internally illuminated signs. And in our staff recommendation of approval, item 5 actually addresses some of these details. Signs, murals, final lighting plan would have to be submitted later, or separate certificate of appropriateness. I think that's at this stage, it's a detail from my perspective. The brand may want certain things, but the brand's going to have to accommodate, at least lighting with respect to Delaware and historic district requirements. I don't think anybody is going to mess with the brand's fonts and those sorts of things.
No,
the brand, I'm sure, really cares about.
You go to Alexandria, Springfield Suites there in the Old Town. They've got to sign what you're asking for.
Yeah, my point is, I'm not sure we have to spend a lot of time on that tonight, as you have your hands full with probably the rest of it, because at least if you follow our recommendations, because our recommendations, that's really got to come back. Yeah.
We make the commitment to you that the signage will be acceptable to the commission in terms of our going forward.
Okay. One thing about the parking garage that Bill did mention is each of those little window bays could conceivably be places for murals or some kind of artwork that the city would want to use. And that, whether it's, on that side, this side, any one of the sides of the parking garage. So there is some space to address the current interest of the city to, do that kind of thing, to dress up the exterior.
In fact, if you look, there's a note on our plan. I think it's worth it for me just to take 1 second to point it out to you. If I could find it myself. On one of the elevations, it does talk about,
Right, it's, okay, I found it. It's on the,
I'll use as large.
East Winter Street, East Winter Street elevation. It says that the wire mesh screen and steel tube frame with mural design overlay. So you could have a mural design overlay on those mesh screens.
Commissioners, part of our thinking that in our comment, I think the applicant's reflecting some of our comments is in our comprehensive plan and two informal discussions you heard tonight, the opportunity to produce some additional public art around our community, but B, also knowing that this is part of a garage and you have to have airflow and other building code requirements, but the metal mesh screening may not be the final design solution, and that might be a way to have public art and also provide some screening of the metal mesh screening, if you will, and anticipating maybe some of your comments. So
Camouflage of the mesh screening is what.
well, it's at the end of the day, it's a parking garage.
Right.
Some greenery.
There are actually different.
Could be greenery.
There are different sizes of screening and holes and things like that. And we've talked a little bit to the architect about the possibility of, finding some area where it would be small enough to be able to do a mural on the screen, or at least letters that appear to be a mural.
And to be clear, that does not have to be included if that's also your direction.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to have murals or something.
Well, it's something that could be added at a later date, when.
Yeah, I
the city's
think
doing
that's,
their own.
I think that just kind of, for right now, I think that just kind of muddies the waters, in terms of, staying on target of getting through the packet as you.
Right, no, it's an add-on.
It's an add-on, something you can do in the future,
Yeah,
just so you know it's available.
Exactly.
This is the courtyard elevation between the parking garage. So it's really the east view of the building if we were standing where the parking garage is.
Yeah. And then.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
T-bar.
No, yeah, that's part of the.
Yeah, that's looking from the hotel to the parking garage from the hotel windows.
Which you really have to see. All right, let's get.
I know it's not moving
Yeah.
forward.
Oh, it's not? Out of batteries, we
There
knew
we
you
go.
would do
There we go.
something, okay. Getting to the actual colors, which I think is really, and the external finishes of the building, I think it's important for us to spend some time, because I think that's really where you want to be, or where we all want to be tonight. Because we know that there were some comments by staff about window treatments and other things, and the use of bronze in the building, and the types of windows and things that we're going to have in the building. And we wanted to chat with you a little bit about what we're proposing here. First, Paul, in terms of
This is a brick. Pictures on computers look really nice, but the actual bricks, we're anticipating it being somewhere in this range. Obviously, once you actually order your bricks and everything, there was some variation, but it should be. We like the reddish orangish look, kind of a little bit darker. That seems to be more historic and everything, and it looks better. And we looked at all sorts of different colors. We didn't like the really orange ones because that looked too modern, like a high school or something.
Right.
Didn't want to go with that look. So we wanted something that had a little more character to it, and that's why we went right in this range.
And we think it's consistent with the buildings that are around.
The stonework is going to be, I don't know if the texture is on the top or the smooth is on the top or bottom or which way, but there'll be there'll be brick, and then as you get into the stone, you're going to have a stone look here, and then there'll be a smooth piece coming across as a separate border that will give us some texture to it as well, so it kind of blends in. This is probably kind of color that we're going for. It might be a little bit darker than this, because I'm not sure we want as much contrast, but we got some flexibility here at what to do.
Yeah, I guess, that was one of the things that jumped out at me is the garnet color in the packet. Typically what you find in Delaware is limestone because we're sitting on a lot of limestone in this part of Ohio. And so, in terms of the historic buildings downtown, I think, from my standpoint, if you could stay in a line, something that, looks more like limestone, it would look more appropriate.
We had those samples.
So the garnet's not something that you're necessarily married to. A limestone would be something that you could incorporate into the design.
Okay.
Yeah, we're here to please.
And this
At
is
the end of the
really-
day, we want the building.
Okay. I was going to suggest if you maybe would bring those over to Ms. Riviere, you can pass them. It's always nice if we can.
Just pass the dark one.
I don't know if you want them both.
And the one thing about these accents of the stone, it's really just the first floor.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The guest rooms are strictly the brick.
Yeah.
But like the
And
lentils
some
and
drive it accent there up near the top.
what color did you have then spec for like the lentils? Would that be whatever color you decide? So like more of a buff limestone or grayish limestone? But that would be the idea, is all that would tie in with one. Okay.
And could you clarify on the elevation, the lighter pattern on the first floor is the smooth stone, and then the rougher texture in the elevation is
The
the
stonework.
rough?
You talk about the
Right.
stonework where it says.
Right. That's
Exactly.
the rougher and that's the smooth, correct, yes.
I think that the idea was that the rough looking would be more like a cut limestone kind of look.
Right.
Correct, Jim?
Can we get the same?
But yeah, to take up on Dave's point, so it looks like,
Same pattern.
where does this go? So this would be on the lower floor, but the areas where, for instance, that looks like that's going to be, for lack of a better word, a fake. You've got it called out as a stone veneer. That's not this, or is it?
It is.
Okay, I
It's
just want to make
just the
clear.
product is not necessarily 6 inches deep. It's,
Right.
We're gonna get the limestone sample.
So my question was, it looks like, so I was, from looking at your drawing, I was thinking like the lentils, of course, would be smooth, because that would be normal.
Right.
This area here, is that?
No, it's smooth.
Okay, so this that looks like it's like supposed to be hand cut stone is not. That's this? Okay, all right, that's what wasn't clear.
So that's a
one
little
question I got
different,
on
because
that.
we had talked about more of a hand cut limestone, like the sample board I showed you
Yeah, he went to the car to get a limestone.
with the man-made material, but then that's the nature of the question. Because it definitely appears that way.
That calls out like a very different
Yeah.
texture in the drawings. That's why I wasn't clear.
Mark, I'll be honest, I'm on the same page as you are about that stone. I think and we don't have a sample of it here, but I do believe the stone around the door and that cut stone is a Marriott brand kind of requirement. Now, I think we can get it to color, it won't be limestone, but it is a cut stone. The limestone would be the smooth part in
Okay.
between that. Because that's part of, I mean, as much as you want to change what, to a historic look for the product here in Delaware, Marriott still has some certain
Right.
things they're not going to let us get by
Right,
with.
but of course, you're in
Change
front
it.
of us asking for variances from our
Right.
standards.
Right, I understand.
So there
Well,
has to be, it's
we've-
got to be a two-way street.
Well, I showed you what they really want in that very first picture.
Right. Well, I can show you what we really want too, which is probably vastly
So
different.
we've tried to
So
come to the
we can-
middle.
We can play that all night long.
Right.
But I will
But I think
say,
it'll still look, it'll still be real stone.
yeah, and normally that's not something that we would want, I'll be honest with you, because it's outside of, if you look around, so I know you took some pictures of the Hayes buildings. That was something we went through quite a bit. Obviously, there's the other hotel that's being built. And that was, if you look around at any of the new builds, which there are not a lot of in our area, that would be an element we wouldn't normally approve. Doesn't mean we won't,
Okay.
but just kind of as a heads up, would be something we normally wouldn't approve.
Couple things. No, because it just tags on to that. So, but first, since this like came across my field of vision while I was forming that thought. So, yeah, to me, this is closer, but it's, Chair seems to be saying. This graphite color is
That's
okay.
That's what it
what
says.
we've chatted.
Right, that,
The
yeah,
rough looking stone on here.
right, that's what I'm thinking.
Not the smooth, you have the smooth.
The smooth is in between.
Okay,
Right.
because to me,
Which is actually, I think, closer to your typical Fairfield brand.
Right.
than your other kind. You.
It's just a
Fairfield
limestone
uses more of
versus-
what I
In the
would
courtyard.
consider to be a ledge stone there. This is more of what we call a cultured limestone, blue vein limestone. That's how we took it as staff.
Okay. But let me ask this, is that acceptable?
Maybe that's not what you meant.
That we need to go to Marriott and talk to them about?
So,
Because it is limestone?
We already get different local purveyors here.
right, but,
So it should be.
so the standards generally don't allow you to imitate natural material. So while that is a natural material, it's still a facade, right? So if you wanted to actually build supporting columns out of limestone or a foundation out of true limestone, we'd let you do that. But it just overall with the idea, and Kara can definitely get into this more than I can, she's an architect, but kind of the idea behind the standards is you pay homage to, but you don't try to recreate or make something that it isn't. So you don't allow a fake slate roof or fake, vinyl, even though from 30 feet away, maybe up in that gable end, it looks like shingles, cedar shingles. It's not, and so they don't allow that. So that's one of the things. I know, Kara, you have much more of a design background, but that's kind of that's the idea behind the standards, is that you don't have that sort of material that imitates something else. Is that a fair assessment?
That is a fair
Oh,
assessment.
thank you.
Yes. But you're speaking specifically of
Yeah,
that and
the
trying to imitate that.
it's kind of a cut stone
limestone
veneer,
foundation,
basically,
yeah,
right.
But that it wouldn't actually be limestone foundation. Okay.
I have a piece of real limestone too.
Well, those are real limes that are just cut.
From about 10 feet away, you can't tell.
well,
Right.
one of the things for me in the design, and there's several, and I'll hit on all of those. And first of all, I will say this: the design that you brought forward is way better than the first design that the Endus company brought to us when they had their first bite at the apple over on Springsteen Street. So I think, the gulf between, in my mind anyway, the design that you're presenting here and where we want to get to is much narrower than that project. That said, one of the things that bothers me on this, and I think this is going to be a complication because the indication is that this is a Fairfield or a Marriott requirement, is to me, it just, and it's hard to tell from this rendering because it's not, it's not super large or detailed, but to me, it just kind of looks like there's a fake rusticity to it, that, again, it doesn't seem to me to be, it seems incongruous with virtually everything else downtown. It just looks like, to me, like somebody that was, that's the kind of finish, somebody would use on a cabin, up in the mountains. And again, it's hard to tell, but that's, when I look at, this rendering, it just looks, it just looks really rustic.
Is that mostly the stone that causes that, Mr. Coleman, in your mind, or what
Well,
elements contribute
I
to
don't know,
that?
maybe it's the randomness of the pattern. I mean, the other thing that maybe harkens back to is some of the old structures, a limestone foundation, but a limestone foundation.
It doesn't go that high.
It goes, yeah, it goes
Yeah.
maybe 2 feet above,
Yeah.
grade. And this is something that's going, apparently, some of these people are normal height. It looks like it's going about 12 feet high. And to me, that just seems like a pretty jarring finish for downtown. So that's.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I'm just trying to.
Yeah,
follow
I'll
up.
just, to just.
Yeah, that
one. I'm talking about this right here. And again, it's hard to tell from this rendering because detail, is not, super defined. But to me, this looks like something I would see on an old structure for a foundation that goes about 2 feet high.
Are you talking about
I'm
just the
talking about
rough,
just the rough area,
Yeah.
just the rough portion.
So are you saying, you would prefer if we use this limestone, cut
I would
limestone,
actually,
that
I
it would,
prefer-
that it would go all the way across and only at a 3-foot level? Would it be consistent all the way across?
No, I think just in that area. Just talking about in the stone area?
I think in general, the rough stone in the elevations is the thing that throws everything off, both that it looks, that it's so rough, and maybe it's not. I'm not clear if that's what's intended or if that's what's intended.
Well, I think Marriott would let us do 4 feet.
Yeah.
So we don't have to go up 12 feet, we don't have to go up the whole floor.
I think you better clarify which material.
Yeah.
Let's-
Right.
Okay.
First
and
of all,
then you
we're
can talk
talking
about
about this
Well,
material
so I-
right now. Let's
just-
just
so,
say this is what we're talking about.
Okay. In the elevations, that is used here, and that is very rough looking. This is rough looking. And that typically wouldn't be used that high. It would typically be a foundation, so it'd come up maybe 2 feet. But also on the south elevation, it's like at the PNC Bank, it's 2 feet, and then it's all the way up, and then it's 2 feet again, and then it goes part way up the tower.
Right, well, that's
It's
what
like
I'm
the
asking.
element that is kind of throwing everything
Are you,
off.
are you suggesting then that we keep it 2 feet, even here, so that it's consistent across?
I suggest either not using it, or if you do use it, that it's a very clean line along the base.
And it stays that way
It stays
all the
that
way
way.
across?
Right, because the idea would be, first of all, I agree, I don't like to replicate something that it's not doing. You're faking a stone foundation. So I'm with Kara, I don't like it, but if you look at, again, the buildings around downtown, or I live in an old house, Joe does, they have limestone foundations because they quarried it, 100 yards away, basically, at Blue Limestone Park. And it is the foundation. Now, old houses, just by design, generally had more, the foundations were deeper, right? And so a lot of that was they just didn't want the wood to rot. If you look downtown, however, you'll see stone foundations on those buildings. They're brick buildings. And so stone foundation, most of the time, only tends to be maybe 12 inches. It might have been a little bit longer, but after they raised up the roads and the sidewalks and who knew what after time, right? So if you look around downtown, you'll see some limestone down at the very bottom, but you won't see it used as a veneer, as a design element. And that's certainly my problem with it. I would prefer, if you were going to use it, I'd prefer you didn't, I think, but where I would prefer it is, and it's hard to tell again because of kind of the lack of detail here, but if you ran this material all the way down to grade, that would probably be my choice. But if,
Up or?
no, just so what you have here, I would rather see this material from grade. I'm assuming this is
That's what that is right there, yes.
on this. So I would take out this.
All the way. Take out the rough stuff and leave it all smooth.
Yeah, or if you wanted, I think maybe to look even more accurate, this would be very low, create about 6 inches of that, and then have your color, the dark brick all the way up.
I think we need that.
Because I think that, again, we don't want to try and fake people out. Ooh, that's an old building. But again, you want to pay homage. And so, as you mentioned, you looked around, and if you look around at the buildings downtown, they have a foundation. You may see some of that. So if you want to put a row or two of that down there, you could. But I'd like to see really just that dark red brick across.
Well, we had the corner pieces, really, I think that was sort of our choice to try to put some emphasis on it, but I think that's
You
not
can
a
use
problem
that on the
to.
corner piece.
Yeah, it's not a problem to eliminate, that's what I'm saying.
We can
Yeah.
get rid of that rough stone.
Okay, this stuff is good. This stuff not so much.
We like that stuff.
Okay, all right. And again, not that the Hayes building, I don't know, it's probably won an award somewhere, but it's one of those, it's a very big building, huge scale, and it's a new infill, right? And I think the one thing that we went through, and we had some very long, late meetings that hopefully we won't have to subject you guys to, because it's such a prominent area of town. It's right across from the original courthouse. It's very tall. I know there was pictures in the package somewhere of the Hayes building. And like I said, it's just an example of new materials that in a new build that really kind of, I think, emulated the scope and kind of the structure and the ratio, if you will, of an older building.
Yeah, it's not a.
So,
It was in here.
just to recap, for those playing the home game here, the stone that appears to be rough on all the elevations, the preference of
to
the
your left.
commission would be to simply remove that and use the smoother looking stone that you had on the elevations, all on that first floor. Or if you wanted to use the rougher stone, use it in more of a water table, a 2-foot kind of water table way, foundation. Even all the way across, so it doesn't change in vertical, in height. Well, I think it was a suggestion, no more than 2 feet, I guess is what I heard. Is that?
Yeah, or I think,
I'm trying to take notes.
yeah, that's fine. If you want to call out, and I agree with Kara on the one elevation here where you're kind of all over the board, but if you want to create some sort of a band or something with this to break up, I don't think you want it just to be a monolith of this, which is oftentimes why you have these two sides. So if you want to create a band, whether it's horizontal or vertical, I think that's fine. At least for me, I can't.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I would agree.
With the
The rougher toward the bottom, just to create, essentially what looks like a footing or foundation, and then smoother version of that. And again, the graphite to me is closer than, whatever that was.
Right here.
But,
That we, in South Florida, we call that Boca Pink. It's really ugly, to be honest with you.
Well, it's great for making art. But again, I think that texture, again, closer to a limestone color would be, to me, I think would be optimal.
That's not that's
So
fine.
on this East Winter Street where there's a fall off of the elevation, maybe I should ask you,
Keep that
since
line.
you're there, I was gonna say, we keep it, if it's 2 feet at this corner, it goes straight across. Down here, it could be 4 or 6 feet at
Well,
the far end of the,
You can treat each business as a separate entity, so the Fairfield,
Okay.
yes, the line wouldn't stay the same, but you could
then you
change
could
that
drop
line
it
for the,
and
yeah.
make it 2
Almost
feet to
just step it.
whatever
Yes,
is the right
step
of
it down.
Okay.
the bank, and then do it again on the parking structure. Okay. Which one? The front?
The lintels above the windows, you prefer that to be
Smooth.
the same color as those?
Yeah. Yep.
That makes sense.
And you want a lintel over every window.
Yeah, it should have a lintel and a sill normally. Now, I assume you didn't call it out, but now that I'm becoming a hotel expert, you have the in-window HVAC systems, just like they did. And will that be what color? Because you really don't have those drawn in there. I
We can
think,
match, we can either match it to the red, we can match it to the gray, or we can.
Bronze.
yeah, usually the bronze, so,
Like the metal window.
so it fits in with the windows.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
can be any
Okay,
color, I mean, that's easy to do.
okay.
The one thing too about, this is.
You want, I'm sorry, you want it to fit to the window
Window.
color, not the wall color?
Window, yes.
Yeah, to the window frame.
And I don't know, the pleasure of the other commissioners, but to me, the medium bronze is just a little too light. I
There's a
kinda-
dark bronze.
I think a darker bronze might look a little better. But we can make that a little bit darker. There is a darker shade, so we can. Again, I don't know how.
That's actually the way the standards read, is dark
Okay,
architectural
because to me, that
bronze.
just looks really light. to leave that dark.
Believe it, they come lighter.
We can go.
I sure they do.
In some applications, that's.
To match the, what was it?
Yeah, well, the lights are darker.
The pink.
So one thing I did not see anywhere on the renderings, is there any external lighting
Yeah, it shows it.
Yeah.
Does it?
There's
There's
a
stuff
bronze.
on it.
Exterior.
Oh, there,
Sconce,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is,
Right here, actually, yeah.
lighting is an area in our standards and even the national standards that is currently a little vague because of LED. One of the things that we have tried to impress on, we haven't updated our standards to really encompass LED because the national standards and the state standards haven't. But we're trying to keep that below 3,000. So, you get up to 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 and it's almost white blue light. And even if you go around our downtown, you can see some, even if it's just a bulb they put in a gooseneck fixture, if you're above 2,700 is usually soft white. That's what most people have in their homes. And that creates that kind of more of a yellowish look. You get above that and it's just that white look and it's really inappropriate. So we don't have that in our standards, but we would request that you do that. And
The softer color.
yeah, so 27, 3,000 or less, which is usually 2,700.
And the thing on the lights on the first floor that would kind of light the sidewalk and everything, we would look at what you have there for street lights. And if there's sufficient street lights already there, then we probably don't need to have lights on the building like the sidewalk.
Okay.
And then we would probably have up lights, to light the building going up, which would be more subdued.
Commissioners on lighting, I want to make sure we're all clear on, I'm looking at the west elevation. I think it appears on all of them, where it says along the cornice line with LED lighting typical. I took that as sort of LED strip lighting across the cornice, which.
You mean like a line?
Which I'm betting that they may not
Oh, we're not
want to see,
thinking
but
about
what
does that mean?
That would
Quite
that would
understand.
be an uplight. It's not a band, not, but
It would shine up on the corners.
It's
From the
shines
side of
up
the
on the
building.
corners.
We had the red, white, and blue neon, but we took that off.
Well, and that's why I asked, is
No,
because
there is
a lot
no
of,
neon.
a lot of suburban application you might have is, a red LED line around the
Yeah,
entire
no,
corner.
I understand. There
Just wanna
are.
make sure we're-
Our standards actually allow neon signs. So if you want to build a nice Fairfield neon sign.
Do they really
They do.
allow neon?
we had Motel 6.
I have a couple of questions about the storefronts. What is happening below the storefront? What is that material? And then the header that separates the storefront from the transom. So what's happening down here? There's a storefront and then there's this header below the transom. What is that material? What color is it?
My assumption,
Below it would be-
Is that-
below it would be the gray.
the gray,
This-
the
And then
limestone
the,
window
middle
sill
would
look.
probably be like a lentil, so it'd be the same color that we're gonna put above the other windows, I would think.
So that's 2 window units where it kind of looks like one? Is
Yeah.
that what you're saying?
So there's a stone sill,
Stone
base,
sill, right?
and then a window
Right.
unit, and then a header, and then a transom above.
Right, I think so.
Yeah, so what would that transom be made out
And
of?
maybe we'll just put it all in one window, I mean, you can get windows that are big.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
It's not like, the windows aren't gonna open anyway, so.
But you're showing this element that is,
Right.
You would prefer a total window without that?
no, I
Right.
actually don't prefer it, I just want to know what it is.
Let's go with the same color as that smooth.
So it's going to be that same material.
That's what we would think, unless you want a different color.
I
But the point is, we want to make it line up, with the front doors, how you have,
Yeah.
I mean, the doors only go up so much, so we were trying to make it symmetrical. all
Right,
the
no,
way.
I think that's fine.
But
Not saying that we need
structurally, I don't know that it makes sense. Visually, it doesn't make sense to have a piece of what looks like a stone lintel above glass and then more glass above
It's
that.
structural glass.
So we can eliminate it and just make it just one.
Well, you could, or, it could be part of
It
the
could be part of the window.
the window rather than a separate window.
Just the bronze, dark bronze.
It could be a
Right.
piece of the bronze.
That's, yeah, so it's more traditional transom.
Do that.
You could probably, and again, not a design professional, let's get the caveats out there. But if you wanted.
Neither are we.
Hey, okay, if you wanted to play off of that, you could have a band of the rough that would tie that horizontal element all the way through. just as a thought. I think that's what they were trying to accomplish with those windows. You could still do that, have bronze, but if you really wanted to make that line more prominent, you could use the.
Make the line in the stone
In
instead of in the
not in the
window.
stone, but let's, so in this,
The brick or whatever, yeah.
just the rough part of that
What we approved.
to counteract the smooth, because the rest of it's gonna be smooth, so you just have that rough band.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay, I have a question.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, the muntins on the windows, the
Like,
What is-
are we looking on
the
the?
windows, all windows, they have the
elevation?
divided
Yeah.
windows. What are our standards say for divided windows in this?
True Muntins, I believe.
Yeah, but is it typical in this
We would-
type
you
of
mean
building
the-
to have
the
those?
cross hatches in the windows?
Yeah.
We wouldn't have those. He put that in just because he wanted to make it look like a window. Rather than just a piece of blue. It didn't look right on it, so the architect
So-
put that in so you know it's a window.
So would those have a crossbar? So I assume they're non-functioning windows, right?
We don't have them in any of our hotels. We don't have, it's just a
Okay.
window.
Because normally what you would find in downtown is a double hung window. It can be 1/1, 6/6, depending. These are fake muntins, which as you look from the outside, you can tell why we generally don't like those, because they look terrible. I won't, never mind, the city. Go figure. So normally we would want just, to kind of match, and by and large, if we look around downtown, I think 1/1 is the prominent window design downtown. And that's why I wondered if, and I hate to put fake things on, but if there's a way to make that look more like a 1/1 window rather than just a big pane of glass.
I think, are you speaking of windows above the first story? And the
Yes,
first
yeah,
story,
yeah, so,
maybe have a
yeah,
different
correct,
conversation.
correct, yeah.
1/1?
You know,
I
I,
more
Don't
typical.
look unless you had a piece of metal in it or something.
Well, that's what I'm kind of looking towards Kara. She knows what's available more than I do,
But
but
if you just visualize this as the vertical muntins being taken out.
Yeah, but you need at least one vertical to get the right proportions, yeah.
there's no vertical, you're talking about in the windows?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are no vertical pieces in the windows now, Ms. Herring, if that's what you were talking about. Those are,
You're talking horizontal.
no, that's not, that's, I asked the same question, and the reason is that when you look at the building in smaller view,
Yeah.
it looked like just blue, and nobody really
I know.
knew what it was.
But you're
Well,
asking us to
I think they're
approve drawings.
suggesting that you should have some of those.
Well, I don't, yes, I don't,
As opposed to just one piece of glass.
right.
Or at least a horizontal.
Plus also you're showing us how, you're asking us to approve something that is not what you're actually proposing. You're proposing windows with muntins. In this drawing, you're asking us to approve these drawings. But then you're saying those don't actually exist.
Right, they were valid, it's a valid
Yeah.
point.
So commissioners, 1/1, but do you think of vertical
well, I don't,
divide?
I don't know, because I haven't seen anything like that
Yeah.
from, and I don't know commercial windows inside and out.
Well, are these, is the PTAC, the Hampton Inn, the PTAC system was integral to the whole window, right?
Right,
So do you have the same system?
that's, yeah,
The
basically.
PTAC system was
Yeah, all
integral to
hotels
the
have
window?
the same thing.
Okay.
So it's below the window, and then the PTAC unit is there, and then the window goes above it. So the windows aren't allowed to open normally by building code.
Right.
Because you can put 5-story windows and they're open out.
Looking, do we know how tall is the glass in the window?
Couldn't tell you, I would say normal. And you guys have all stayed in hotels,
Yeah.
it's gonna be about the
Right.
same size that you're used to.
All right.
I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel here.
There are other details I would want to see, like this stone band going across the first floor. And what is that, how deep is it, does it have any profile to it? The cornice as well. From the front, It looks like there are brackets under the cornice, but from the sides, I don't see what those bracket profiles are.
Yeah, we don't have any of those normal call outs.
Yeah. And the railing of the balcony.
You talk about here.
I think, yeah, I think that's noted as an LED lighting typical across the building, but if
Oh wait,
that,
those are little lights.
you talk about what appears to be bars across the.
Rectangular bar there.
Yeah.
Looks like brackets.
Yeah, that's a lighting element, but.
Oh, it's a little.
He did a mark on there with that.
What's this?
Many historic cornices had bracketing that was underneath them as well, and that's what it appeared like to us as staff too, I think, to the commission as well. I didn't read those as little light.
Yeah, because the only lighting call out is just a bronze exterior sconce, which is on page 11, which I'm sure that's not what that is up there.
No, that's down on the first floor.
Right, that would be my thought.
What's this, in the note, anyway, it says cornice with LED lighting typical, but.
Yeah, that band is just planned to be just the same stone.
Yeah, but when I asked you about that earlier, you said that was an uplighting of the cornice, that note, so now I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I'm just, I think we still have a long road to hoe here, tonight, me personally, I think we're gonna need to see a lot more detailed drawings on a lot of these elements, before any approval could be given. So I think this is gonna be more of a, how do we, I guess giving you guys some guidance in terms of where we need to go, and then developing, detailed drawings, including, detailed drawings of the cornice details, probably a more detailed lighting plan, what the lighting is, what type of lights these are, how they're placed, something that, drawings of the actual lights, so that, we just have more information to make a, I guess an informed decision when we vote.
And one of the things, and I don't know your situation, but most of the time with these big commercial projects, the architect is here so we can ask them directly and they can say, okay, here's what it is, or that. I don't know if he's down in Florida or where your architect is, if it would be.
I mean, when we get to that point, we can certainly have them here, but we're still negotiating with the city of Tennessee, and until we get that locked up, we're just.
Okay.
Where we're at.
Okay.
So if I could,
No, please.
Oh, I just had one additional question, and I apologize if I've just missed this. I don't see it anywhere in the packet, though. On this west elevation that we have here on the screen, the tower to the left of that main bay where it says Fairfield Inn, what is that material for the tower above, essentially above the roof line there? Is it going to be stucco or?
That's just showing where the garage is. That's
No,
not.
that's not.
That's not the hotel.
Yeah, you're gonna see that.
Okay. So that is only the one on the east side.
Yeah, I think if you look at the south elevation, it's the back of this.
Right, yeah, it's the elevator.
Okay, well, the further question, I mean, on the renderings, we have at least 3 different towers on the hotel itself. What is the material? Because I see it referenced there is Norman brick
That
on the rest of the
material
hotel.
will be just smooth stone, just like we have.
Okay.
on the first.
Okay, so that is actually smooth stone, not EIFS.
I don't believe so.
And so it would be the light, presumably the gray granite colored smooth stone would be each of those 3 towers.
And we lay that out better in the next one.
Okay.
We'll get that.
I hate to go backwards a little bit.
No,
I'm
that's
still a little bit confused,
That's fine.
but not confused, but I don't know if we made a decision about the window treatment. Ms. Herring, you were sort of focused on that, is it?
I think that,
Just while you're thinking, I just wanted to interrupt. So point real quick, we were talking about the windows, and on your east elevation, if we look towards the left side of the page, it calls out 1 inch insulated glass, divided light aluminum windows. So your architect obviously called out divided lights. but you're saying they would not be divided, so that'd definitely be something we'd have to clear up.
I think the architect needs to show us exactly what it is that you're proposing, but also whoever the expert is on the PTAC unit and the window unit will know what parameters are available. I don't know what options are available with those units. But then generally going back to our historic standards, and we would expect more of a vertically proportioned window, single hung look, as close to it as we can get with the PTAC units.
So basically, you're describing the window?
You understand?
The window, yeah.
And how do you describe it?
Or you want?
So what our expectation is that the proportions of the window are vertical and that they're single hung. We know that's not possible with these windows because it's a hotel, but we don't know what the options are with the PTAC unit and the window to get as close to those proportions as possible.
So these are kind of square, and she's saying they should look a little more rectangular.
You want them taller than wide.
Yes.
Well, they would be taller.
There's actually,
And then
They'll be
divide.
twice as tall as they're wide.
in the standards, there's actually a ratio.
Yeah.
So if your architect looks at the standards, and those are based on the National Historic Trust standards.
Yeah.
There's a ratio in there.
So I think with the Hampton Inn, where the PTAC unit kind of became part of that look.
The
It
whole
did,
window,
right,
yeah.
So
made
it
the
gave it
windows
a little
appear
more height.
Yeah, I think that's the intent.
Even though it
Too.
wasn't window, it was a PTAC unit, but it gave it a little more height, but then the windows were also, I think, divided.
There was a division, and it's possible there were actually two windows placed together.
Two together.
Because it was more than just
I
a
remember.
mullion,
Yeah,
it was the wider
yeah.
band.
I think so.
We know
What
that there are
could we do that would
options.
be different than their window?
Well, they have.
I think your architect has to figure that out.
All right.
Yeah.
But I mean, if
I
we,
mean, I'm inclined not to want to do what they're doing.
I totally understood, but then your architect needs to figure out a solution.
Okay.
but if I'm hearing correctly, the 1/1 look with the faux mullion is what,
Not
Was-
what we're looking for.
You don't
Yeah.
like this fake double hung
No.
look?
no, nothing,
No.
no, but just a single,
I think you need to refer back to our guidelines.
All right. Other questions, thoughts around the elevations, details? Obviously, we know we've got some questions moving forward, but in order to make sure that they have as much
Right, okay.
detail, thoughts,
Yeah, so, okay, I guess, just moving on to, it's just such a big project. I mean, there's a lot of things to cover here, so it might seem kind of scattershot, and I apologize if that's on, firing, but, so a couple things that I kind of struggle with. If you look at, I think, could you bring the south elevation up?
Sorry. There you go.
There's a lot going on there with, the cornices and the towers, and to me, it just, it looks like a lot of, there's a lot of complexity there that doesn't look, that doesn't really, to me, jive with the historical precedents, I understand the elevator tower may have to be somewhat taller or more prominent, but, like the front cornices, how they jump up, there's like, I can't tell, is that two or it just seems like there's a lot going on there. The one I guess that particularly I think I struggle with is, actually, if you can go back to that south elevation.
I was just looking at this to see what were those towers.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that might
That was
be
my
the central, yeah,
The
so.
reason there's the jut out,
Yeah, well, actually, I'll tell you, what I'm referring to is like this bit here,
right,
Because it just kind of like here, it jumps up and then here it just kind of like falls
Just
off
dies,
and it just looks, I don't know how to describe it, but I don't, it looks somewhat jarring to me, that line, it just
Well, I
it looks
think
almost like a fake facade.
it does, and I think part of that is the elevator tower essentially wraps the cornice all the way around. And to your point, the front cornice just drops, which does look like a facade, which wouldn't be totally inaccurate, but the facades generally didn't wrap
What
around.
that,
It looks like a
what
control
that
tower.
extension out to the left is the suites, where the rooms are longer.
Right, right. No, all we're talking about really is not the building itself,
Just
but simply, see how the cornice
Right,
wraps
goes
around
right.
your tower? Here,
It
just
does
simply
not.
cuts off. Now, as Joe pointed out, that makes it look more like a facade, which actually, if you look downtown, most of the buildings do have a kind of just a singular facade up front. But remember, there are rows of buildings, so you never really see the side line. So that's.
Well, and that's another thing about this particular point, is everybody looking at the south has more comments about the south elevation. And the reality is, nobody will ever see the south elevation like this in full front view.
All the people in Salem Portland.
Because you're only across the street.
Right, right.
And you're gonna see the PNC building.
I'm trying to envision it from, say, the corner in front of the old Lee Hotel, I guess, whatever those are called now, but,
Where the
catacomb-
assisted living is?
No,
No, that's Sarah Moore.
No, the other one.
Apartments
The,
now, winter.
the southwest
Winter
corner. I wonder that you might see that. And then the other thing is the elevator tower. I almost wonder if it would look better if you didn't have the cornice on that, because it just kind of almost looks, like that's an element that it would almost look better if you de-emphasized it instead of having that cornice on there. If you look at, I think there's an elevator tower, maybe on the Strand building, on one of these buildings around here. I know there's one, and it just sticks up. And I mean, it's utilitarian. But I think that's almost something that you want to try to de-emphasize it as much as you can, rather than, put something that draws the eye to it.
One of the things we did on those with the Hayes building, because one of the downsides is they tend to start to look like helipads. And particularly when you get into the size of a like the county building at the Hayes building, they put a hip roof on it, for lack of a better word. I don't know that solves anything here. I see what Joe is saying. There's just a lot of different, almost looks like a chessboard to me. Chess pieces moving around with the heads on there. I don't know how to solve it. I'm not an architect, but just from a view standpoint, it's not my favorite, but I don't know. I understand you have to have an elevator tower. I don't know if lopping the cornice off of that, it probably takes the eye away from it some. But it gives it a very industrial look at that point.
I think also, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Coleman, I think part of the issue is that there's no color or surface treatment on there now as well. So that really brings your eye right to that element. But I do agree with you, and I think if the top were taken off and the external treatment was brick, the same way as the rest of the building, it's probably going to disappear much more than what it is right now.
And that was the reason I asked what the material would be on those towers for this very discussion, because when I look at it, it looks like, for lack of a better term, it looks like an airport control tower a little bit. It does really stick out to me, and it just, and it just throws everything off to me. It doesn't feel like an old downtown building, which is sort of what we want it to look like, so it blends in. And so, right, I think if we could explore different treatments, maybe keep it the same color of brick, if it doesn't look too brutalist by doing that. Play around with the roof, like we talked about. And I think
and I think
there's options, right?
Yeah, and I think I would even say, not much the same about the tower, the west tower of the parking garage. That I'm not, it's a parking garage, so it is industrial. I mean, in a certain sense. So maybe it doesn't need to be.
If it looked more like the east tower.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you could almost consider that to be more of like a supporting structure. This is kind of the main structure. This is what you want to look at. This is a little more supporting, industrial, whatever you want to talk about.
Let me Okay.
No, go ahead.
Let me ask you about another feature up there.
Okay.
That's the, right below the cornices, those little rectangular pieces that he labeled as lighting.
Well, that's what we talked about. We thought
Well,
those
I
were
think-
brackets.
I think what that is that it's intended to look like a piece of limestone across there. From the top of the limestone, you would have a light shining up on the cornice, which gives it, I don't know what, I'm not an architect, by any means, but whatever you call that, what?
It lights it up, it looks like.
No, forget the light up part. Well, during the day, when there isn't lights, it gives some texture to, you know, like on some historic things where they got the
little jut out.
The little jut out things, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
So it's kind of, yeah, corbelled.
What do you call that stuff?
Well,
Ms. Herron?
it could be a bracket. Normally, if you,
No, if it was like a solid piece of stone that has that little, then,
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the Allen.
Some detail.
like
yes.
crown molding in your
Yes,
house, except
exactly.
bigger.
Right,
You
exactly.
know, where you have the little
Right.
tiny 1-inch pieces
Yeah,
at
just
the
a little
bottom
piece,
of your
yeah.
crown molding.
it's called
This
dental
one's-
trim.
What's it called?
Dental trim.
That's
Looks like
the
teeth.
word.
Right.
This is big dental trim.
Okay.
And above the big dentals is the lighting that shines up on the cornice, which is going to accent your roof line and that cornice look. I think that's what he was trying to accomplish there. We'll give you a better definition, but I'm afraid if we take that off, I mean, it's just going to start
Yeah.
looking plain.
It's
Yeah.
difficult for us to say yay or nay without the detail. So normally, when you have those, they call them out, they have a very detailed drawing of whatever that is, if it's a bracket, if it's dental trim or whatever. And that's that is what's lacking here is just that detail, because I kind of feel like we're all guessing maybe what he or she was doing.
I put down here detail of
Yeah.
each item. Right.
And along with that, I don't know if we mentioned, we also usually like to see the depth of the cornice.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that would be a detailed drawing that
Part of
would be
that
called
detail.
out and cross
Yeah.
reference. So one of the other things, and we can certainly continue to dive through the details, but just to make sure that we cover it, there's a lot of other things here, and I don't know where we're going to end up with all of this, but there's a lot of other variances. The biggest one being that this is greatly oversized compared to what our standards allow. So our standards essentially allow, I think they call it 2.5, but it's essentially a 3-story. I believe it says no more than 2.5 stories or 35 feet in height. 35 feet in height, and normal construction is 3 stories, so let's just call it 3 stories. Sarah Moore's 3 stories, the Justice Center's 3 stories. Obviously, all of the buildings on Winter Street, the original buildings are 3 stories. The little infill there on the northwest corner is 1 story. It's an old warehouse or something.
So is that going to be a problem? We get 5 stories?
Well, it requires a variance, and so I think we definitely have to talk about it, because one of the things, when I first saw this, and because I am very familiar with that area, it's kind of our entertainment district, that this is a massive structure in that space that will be, 2 stories taller than any of the buildings around it. And it's also on a fairly high piece of ground. Now,
Could I interject for just a second? Because I think this is a very important discussion we're getting into, and one of our members, I think we should probably have like a 5-minute break, because it's 3.5 hours into this.
Okay.
And maybe just, but I think.
yeah. Let's take a
2.5.
5-minute break.
It feels like 3.5.
It does.
It's 2.5.
I'm gonna get some water.
Aren't those old buildings across the street, aren't they already taller than 3 stories?
No, they're actually, the standards actually call it 2.5. It's 35 feet. It's in old construction, it's 2.5, in new construction, it's 3.
What is it? If it's in the transitional sub-district, not in the actual historic core, it can be 2.5 or 35 feet if it's in the middle of the block.
Right.
If it's
Yeah, we're-
rezoned, right? Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, I'm
if-
sorry.
if there's, we gotta, that's.
Yeah, we need to in. Let's try and get going.
All right, so the pizza.
I think, hang on just a second. I think are you guys ready?
Good.
We're all good? Get everybody in? All right.
Our real question is, we raised it, and we thought that this was not an issue, was the height of the building. If we can't be 5 stories, the deal's dead.
Right.
We're just not gonna build it. It just economically wouldn't make sense.
Right.
So you
And
need to really decide where you guys are against it, we can try to stop.
yeah,
We're home.
so it does require a variance, right? And so when we went through with the other hotel, and I know you're not really from here, but if you drive by there, that site, one of the things there's a few things that was in that site's favor. One, it's a little bit more removed from downtown. 2, it sets back into about a 40-foot hill. On top of that 40-foot hill is Owu Student Center, which is about 3 stories. So from a scale standpoint, it was off on the edge of downtown, set back into a hill, and its height didn't exceed that of the student center behind it. Your building will greatly exceed the height of anything around it other than maybe the 23 bypass. And you know, we certainly could have brought this up earlier. I guess that's fine. And I fully understand because they said the same thing. I'm not in the hotel business, but I'm in business, and I fully understand for the room rates that you charge, we have to have this much, right? So our decision or our purview is to decide because that is part of the variance that's in front of us, right? That is a design standard. Now, as I'm sure Dave will tell you, you have the ability to take our decision to city council, ask for a redecision. It is a little bit different than, say, planning and zoning, where you have a different appeal process. But as a board, all of that has to be wrapped into our decision. I'm guessing we're probably not going to get to that decision tonight because we've got a lot of design elements we have to get back and talk to, which is really kind of why I wanted to bring that up to the board, because sometimes we tend to dive into the minutia and maybe sometimes forget about the big picture. To me, when I look at this, there's a couple of things that Mr. Eflin had brought up about it, which kind of went through before. Rezoning, do we extend the historic district over there?
Yeah.
Could you give us a quick recap on why that might or might not be beneficial? Dave, Diane, so. I know you made that recommendation.
Yeah, it's getting late. I'm not sure I can coherently put all that back together for you. So as the zoning sits today, regardless of the historic overlay for a second, there would be a height limitation that is far less than what you're showing. If we were to move to a zoning more like the central business district, then that height limitation can go up from a zoning perspective.
Do you know what it goes to from 35 feet to?
It's 3 stories.
From the zoning perspective, it's fairly high. However, in comes the historic district overlay, which then suggests that buildings, I think it shouldn't be more than 3 stories high, even in the core.
Yeah, it's 35, 2.5 and 35
Yeah.
in transitional.
That's
So-
interior, though.
No, exterior.
According to what
Exterior.
according to the staff report.
So however you slice it, HPC would have to grant a variance to a building of this height, which you've done before in terms of the new courthouse, in terms of the new hotel, and there are some fairly tall, we've looked at the building, you can't see it in the dark, but the building right behind this one is a taller building than what the standards would allow today too. So there's some of that, but that is, I think in my experience with HPC, the design details coupled with the height matter. It all matters
Yeah, it
together
does.
as it fits together. So it may not be easy for them to say, or they probably would have let off with, well, just this height is, I don't have to talk to you about windows because the height doesn't work for me, but they pretty much know that would end your project.
Right.
There's certain elements, as I said before, to the site that really lend itself to allowing this project to be at 5 stories. First of all, it slopes off substantially to the east as you get towards 23. There are obviously no buildings to the east of us. We have the highway, and it really probably won't, it'll be barely seen passing by on the highway. The Judicial Center is to the north of us, which is closed at night for the most part, and is an administrative or governmental building. No residences in it. And I doubt that the judges would be obnoxed by a little bit larger building. We do have a couple of buildings that are across the street to the south of us, and we've looked at pictures that we've taken of those buildings, and they clearly appear to be, although they may be called out as 4 stories, they clearly appear to be at approximately the same height, given what appear to be larger or higher floor-to-ceiling measurements than we would have in our building. They appear to be.
Are you referring to the Sarah Moore?
Is that the Sarah Moore building?
The assisted living.
Right.
Yeah, that's the Sarah Moore. Yeah. That-
How tall is that?
It's 3 stories.
But, you know, one thing that, and I don't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
But
It's okay.
I would, that was really helpful with, you know, the other hotel project. A couple things that would really, really help us wrap our brains around this, because right now there's no context for us to place these drawings in. What they did is they gave us elevation drawings that incorporated surrounding buildings and landscape features such as the hill, the Will building, that really helped us, you know, see it in its context. And then on top of that, they actually came up and, you know, you can go online, I'm sure, and pull up. You've probably already done so, I assume. You've probably pulled up the packet relevant to that project, and you can see that they actually did some representations where they actually photoshopped the building to scale in the environment. And I'm telling you, that really probably was the thing that turned us from saying, oh my God, you want to put this where? To, yes, this looks like it, in that context, it would work. And I think that would be a really useful thing for you to do, you know, with respect to, you know, whether or not you're going to get, you know, a majority of people on this board to approve a variance, you know, to put a 5-story hotel there.
Yeah.
I think just to Bill's point, I do think it's still going to be taller. You know?
Oh, it- yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
we're basically 10 feet per floor, except for the first floor.
Right. And then you've got the elevators out.
So we're 40 feet for 2 through 5, and then you've got 15 feet on the first floor, so you're at 55, and then whatever you got for the elevators.
Right.
So, but I do, in this picture here of the Sarah Moore, is that what you call it?
Yes.
It would appear that their top floor is probably taller than, like they might have gotten high ceilings on the top floor. So they got 3.5 stories, but my guess is it's probably the 40 feet.
Yeah.
And they have, from the picture, it appears that they have a very substantial ground floor elevation to their first floor. So
Well, that's
it's
why
really, it's a
it's-
3-story building, but there's a very substantial ground
A
floor.
lot of it's depending where on the grade you measure it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's the same situation here.
Yeah, except for, unfortunately for you, the problem is your tallest building is at the highest point, right? In a
Right.
perfect world, if you could swap these around, now 23's right here, I fully understand why you don't want to do that. But in a perfect world, if it sloped the other way, it would, I think, be much better. And just to kind of echo on Mr. Coleman's point, I had big problems with the previous hotel. To me, particularly when they first came, it was essentially their suburban design plopped in there. So I think I used the analogy, it was a square peg in a round hole. Well, after multiple meetings, the showing the elevations, I kind of got to the point where they whittled down the edges enough to get it in. It's still maybe not my perfect wish, but I felt that they had done enough, and the commission members felt they had done enough that we did grant the variance. This is a very different site. It's at the very end of essentially our entertainment district. So there's a lot of street foot traffic on Winter. There's the theater, several restaurants, a new restaurant opening up, a winery, all sorts of stuff there. And I think, and I walked down there and I envision kind of looking at the PNC little one-story drive-through and thinking about a very massive building. You know, and that's not saying that's a bad building. It's just saying from where we are, it's a very massive structure. And I've got issues with that. It doesn't feel like it's the right building in the right location for me. I appreciate all the work that we're doing, and I'm not saying no. I'm just trying to give you kind of my thoughts.
One of the things that's really important, and I'm going to just harken back to West Palm Beach, where I have sat on the planning commission for several years. I was chairman of the Downtown Development Authority. I mean, I have serious history with the development of our city. And one of the things that we concentrated on was walkability. We've done a tremendous amount of work on walkability. And one of the things that came out of that is that the feeling that people have when they're walking around the city is really only impacted from the first or maybe first and second floor of the buildings that they're passing by. Because nobody's going to be walking around this building and look up as if they were in New York City looking at a skyscraper and say, oh my gosh, this is a 5-story building, or look how high the elevator shaft is, because basically the elevator shaft is in the back. So when we focus on the design of this building, and I think that Commissioner Herring's comments were spot on as far as the bands and the use of limestone and things like that, that's going to make what this building's really going to look like when it's all said and done. So, I mean, clearly all of your comments are really important in terms of softening the look of the building and working on the cornices and things like that. But if we really think about the entertainment district, and believe me, we've all spent time walking around the city down here. Not as much as you. Well, no, right. I think that we're all going to feel that this building is going to fit into the fabric of it because the first floor and the facade of the building are going to feel right when we all get finished talking about how it's going to be designed. So, I mean, that's my feeling about how the building should fit into the fabric of the community. And by the way, we're extremely familiar with the site that Dave is working on, because we actually spent a lot of time designing. We tried to buy that site. We worked on it for a long time. And so we know the problems that he's faced over there, and blah, blah, blah. It just wasn't for us.
Right.
But, if we can work through the design elements of this project, I think we're all going to benefit from it, from a city standpoint, as far as the parking garage is concerned, which, granted appears to be lower, and we will work towards making this an attractive, walkable area for everybody. Because my partners we're all right. I mean, if we can't get it done, if we get to the point where this becomes an 80-room hotel and a 4-story, we won't be able to go forward.
Right. So, and I get that, the economics are what they are. Yeah. Delaware supports what it will today, but I lived here 20 years, and when I moved here 20 years ago, people thought no one will ever pay more than $10 a plate for dinner.
Sure.
And now it's $20 for a artisanal martini. And it's just that's the way it is. So from a resident standpoint, from a city standpoint, I think it's great to have some hotels here. We are lacking anything in the city, so absolutely for that. But I will say, if you walk out of the Strand and look to the right, or if you walk out of Oak and Brazen, which is the winery, and look to your right, sure, that's what you see. So I fully understand. I go to Chicago a lot, New York a lot. When you're at street level and you're walking right here, yeah, you're really kind of seeing that first floor detail, unless you want to look like a tourist and walk around like that. Mm-hmm. But what, kind of like I said with the statue, the further away you get, the more you see the entire building. So when you're half a block on Winter, which again, that's when you walk out and you're like, whoa, that's a really big building. Again, I'm not saying no, but part of maybe what I'm getting at is that's probably why the design elements are so important, because it is a huge building in retrospect, right? Compared to the other buildings sure, around it. Would I love to see it smaller? Absolutely. I fully understand that you guys have your business needs. But I think for me, my needs are to continue to enforce the standards that we have, create variances when it makes sense. And so that's what I'm just trying to wrap my brain around, does it make sense to grant that variance? Is this the best use are in the best thing for the city and for our downtown area.
I want to add to what's best for our downtown. With it being on that side of town where there's not a lot going on, you have the city police building, you have the library going that direction. I'd really like to see like the artwork that's going to be spread out through town, you know, bringing people other than just downtown, which, you know, we love and support, but to our east side, we have the old train station. I mean, I can see if we have this attraction while this hotel where it is, it's going to bring more investment to that east side, you know, where people are like, oh, well, we can stay at this hotel and go to the train station and have, you know, just like looking at the future, it just pushes more development that way.
Are you thinking of converting the train station to a restaurant?
If I had $500,000 or $1 million, maybe.
Wayne and I drove by it.
Well, that would be to buy it, probably.
Be in the train station.
The bar next to Stop
But-
42's for sale.
Well, I could probably flip that one. But I just think, I mean, right now,
No,
on
I
the
agree.
standpoint of the height, what we're looking at is 23.
Yeah.
Which is not a pretty view.
Right, but that, again, for scale, that's a long ways away. This is
Right.
pow, all of a sudden, it brings that same height of the bypass a full block and up the hill, so. It's
not all that
a
far away.
concern.
You're correct, this development will bring further development after it.
And
After we have an investment of $15 million over there, then, yeah, it's gonna be other development that will follow.
I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, we know that the city wants to develop on the other side of 23. You know, there are parcels over there that people would like to see develop and then that need help. And, you know, you don't want to hear the histories of other cities, but I mean, I've seen it happen in our city where,
Yeah.
you know, no one's ever going to go there. And then next thing you know, it's like, whoa. So anyway.
You mean like Brooklyn and now?
Well, I was, yeah, that's
Just like
Staten
the air
Island.
cooler value of that.
So I would say that I mean, just to echo a point that Commissioner Coleman made, that I think that would really help us a lot is to give us that contextual rendering where we see the 23 in the background, we see the buildings surrounding it, because in the recent years, like you've all seen this with the Sarah Moore Senior Living Center, the Justice Center, some of the other buildings that I like to think of them as the new history of Delaware, they all have a very similar vibe to what you're proposing. They're similar height, they have a similar materials, a similar profile overall. And so I think the fact that you have tried to call that out in this design, it sort of fits within this emerging theme of these new historical structures that we see in the last 5 years or so in Delaware. So I think if we could see that, but understand how it looks in context, I think that would go a long ways.
Yeah, I should tell you, pardon me, we actually had contemplated that and tried to get it done, but our drone guy didn't get there for us.
Yeah.
So-
Some guy laid it out in like the statue of the president.
Right, yeah.
That would not be helpful.
Well, not quite.
After seeing that and hearing your questions, I was glad we didn't bring the photo.
Right, it wasn't a giant hotel kind of pasted correctly.
If you know anyone that knows geographic information systems, they can do 3D renderings as well.
Yeah.
Drop the profile
So,
in that way too.
just to bring this back, so we talked big picture, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, from a variance standpoint from outside of design, I think height is really the only thing that.
From what we can tell before us.
Right, okay, so we have that, so anything else design-wise? Now go ahead and announce the time, make sure they have everything.
Well, one thing while we're still on, right, since you guys are gonna be, presumably working on this, again, that line that just really bothers me. That also adds to the height of the building. Is that functional or is that just aesthetic? Because aesthetically, I don't like it, but, is there
the
some
tooth line?
functionality to it other than that's where the signage is on?
Is that the tooth line that you were talking about?
Yeah, if you go to the, go to the
To
west
the west
elevation.
elevation.
Could you go to the west elevation? Right there. Well, no, that's northeast.
That's west
That is
elevation.
west elevation. Okay. Am I,
Yeah, you're right.
okay. So that I mean, that, basically, I understand you gotta have signage somewhere, but
That's because.
as was previously mentioned, nobody looks more than 10 feet off the ground anyway, so nobody will ever see it. So, I mean, is that possible to drop that central tower down to this elevation? So again, it kind of lowers it a little bit.
The problem is the sign.
So it's in line with the top.
Yes, but you've already established nobody will ever see it.
No,
Because they won't look out.
But I mean, Fairfield can't do signage that says Fairfield and Inns and Suites rather than Fairfield and Inns and Suites. I'm sure you agree that.
Yeah, we have to check with
You know,
Marriott.
you guys are pushing the envelope, so,
Right.
you know, if we can kind of lower the envelope a little bit, you know, every little bit, you know, every
It's
6
just-
feet helps.
It's another question to ask Marriott.
Yeah.
And do
And I
we
think
know,
from,
since we don't have that detail, how much higher that center portion of the building is other than the other two kind of bump outs, as it
We'll have to
were?
ask.
Okay, yeah.
About
I
7
think
feet.
looking at it from the
So-
south,
It's
too,
about the height of the door.
if we could lower
Is that
that.
what you're talking
No,
about?
no. So what Joe is asking, this one is
Yeah.
taller,
Oh,
and
but
I'm
that-
wondering, is it 5 feet taller, 10 feet
I
taller,
think
3
it's-
feet taller?
Yeah.
I think she's right.
This is 7 feet. So that's
Let's
about
ask
7 feet
her.
up there. Yeah, this-
And that would have the added
And so
benefit is if
maybe
you're
another
looking,
3 feet taller,
Yeah.
and then this is another, let's call it 3 feet than
Maybe
that.
another
Maybe
7
not
total,
10, yeah.
higher than that line.
Yeah, I mean, if you
So
could,
Joe, would you like to see?
I mean, if they could at least bring it down to that, the top of those cornices, you know, I mean, that would drop it down, whatever, 3,
So
5
we
feet.
would have a kind of a
See more of the
constant
back
height
of this.
for the cornice, but these two would still be set back
But it's-
to
yeah.
provide some.
Some break, yeah, break up the massing, yeah.
if you were to take a
We have
drive
to-
down Sandusky Street, you see
We
a
have
lot of
to-
that, right? Looks a
Right,
little more level.
For bigger.
Yeah, we have to have those setbacks because it's an inn and suites.
Oh, that's
And in the
fine.
hotel business, the suites
Yeah.
are the ones that are longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think
And I-
that's fine. I'm just saying if you could drop down that,
Yeah, I understand.
it's not quite, well, I guess it's your center. Sure, if you could drop that down a little bit.
We'll check on
The
that.
other thing, and this isn't even about height then,
Actually,
it's
we took the
about
LED
the
lights off the
EIFS
middle.
material for the cornice. Can you do it in metal? I know you don't want to do what the other hotel did, but I believe they did theirs in metal. And EIFS, to me, that just screams, I guess this is the interstate exit we're going to stay at, you know, tonight. And it just, EIFS, it just,
Motel 6.
it absolutely is incongruous with the historic district. And I know the county did it and I wasn't, you know, thrilled with that, but I just think if you could do a different material that actually is not, you know, such a jarring contrast, especially so, you know, because it really is, it is really in the heart of the, you know, the
What if
entertainment
it's brick instead of metal? Metal, metal.
Well, I'm just saying something other than EIFS, something that looks better than what looks to me like sprayed on stucco.
We don't have much ethos on there at all.
Well, it's just, I think the cornice is designed that
The
way.
cornice, yeah.
Did he call that out somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's metal or what?
Oh, okay, I was looking on the side.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're not gonna do it out of brick.
We'll go back and check.
Okay.
Okay, see. I mean, at the end of the day, to be perfectly honest with you guys, what we're gonna ask you for, and maybe you can give it to us or not, we're gonna want to know what the probability is if we make all these changes that you guys are gonna support a 5-story hotel. We're gonna want that before we go and make all these changes. And we have some time.
Sure.
Because we're waiting for the city to give us a MOU and all this, which is gonna take them 2 or 3 weeks. So we're really not gonna go spend any more money on design until we
Right.
get those 2 answers.
Well, I would tell you from my own personal standpoint, you know, I would love to see something other than that little bank kiosk on that corner or something with some substantial massing. I wasn't actually hoping for 5 stories. But again, I would want to see it, I would want to see the renderings, and I think, you know, if you could provide similar, you know, renderings and, you know, something that, you know, shows us the context, you know, I think that would help. Me personally, I mean, I think it would be great to have something like that downtown, but, you know, from the submitted paperwork, I can't say that, you know, I would vote for it. I definitely am not going to say I would vote against it. I would want to kind of see more detail, and I would really want to see what this looks like in context with, you know, the elevation drawings with surrounding buildings, And also if you could do the renderings similar to what the others did, where it actually, you can see, this is what it's going to look like when I'm driving down, East Winter Street toward the hotel. Is it going to be some hulking mass above everything else? Or is it going to be something that, is kind of nestled into the backside of 23 and, it actually brings some, some vitality and some visual interest to that corner? Because right now there's nothing there visually interesting. And I think you have an opportunity to do something there and make downtown. I think the right project and the right building could just be a huge enhancement to downtown. But again, me personally, there's not enough here for me to vote yes.
Okay. I think all the comments about getting this a little more historic looking, whether it's the adjustment of the cut stone to a lower level, all that does change the look of the whole project. I think once we get that taken care of, look at the one thing about that middle part is I got a feeling it's something we got to go to Marriott and wrestle with. Because if you look at their modern style, the picture we showed earlier, this one, that's part of what their look is, and we're trying to take that in context to put it into a historic, but still have them feeling they got their Marriott
That's more
Fairfield.
linear signage than what's on the elevation.
Yeah, but even where that sign is in front, you can tell they extended the front of it, whatever you facade, went up about 6 feet more so they could put that sign on there. And I think that's what the architect was trying to accomplish on ours.
Go back to ours for just a second. Yeah, I think I'm just going to speak out loud as if we're all sort of in session here. But if the sign were applied the same way the other one is with the Fairfield, with Fairfield and then in like that one.
Right. We could shorten.
That we could lower it because it really isn't more than probably 3 or 4 feet if you really stop and think about it or look do the measurement.
Bill, can I ask you a radical question since we're talking about height that you may just say, no, can't do that, but one way to lower the height, not just to try to sort of fake it out with stuff, would be to fill in the void above the PNC Bank with rooms, with hotel, instead of kind of lop the top floor off here. You can't visualize what I'm saying?
No, I know exactly what you're saying.
Increase the footprint of the hotel.
No, I know exactly what
Go
you're
to a
saying.
different one.
Right, yeah, I'll go to the south
elevation.
elevation. You're about filling that in.
So if you filled this in, you could lop that off and it would be forced or be pretty close to the, if you can't,
I don't
you
know if we
can't,
can
and you're
get-
not building the typical Fairfield box with a different skin then, but I'll ask the question for you to do.
Would it, might be due to like AC
corridors, 2
or
elevators.
for PNC, is that?
It's gonna be, this is the way they normally arrange the rooms inside. I understand. But I just,
The advantage of that is we get a PNC that goes into a storefront, which is also what we expect in a walkable downtown community.
Say that again?
Sorry.
Just ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. We can look at it. What were you saying?
So instead of hotel, PNC, garage.
No, I understand what
you
you're
have
saying.
PNC into it's
Right.
the ground floor
Right.
of
Yeah.
a mixed-use building.
That's what you were
Which
saying.
is, which is what we would expect in the downtown is that our retail, our banks, et cetera, are in the first floor of the
I'm
multi-story
actually
building.
disappointed that Dave brought it up because I was going to go back and suggest we do.
Well, now, it will make that feeling of
And it
the
would have been
building
more of a
for block
surprise.
more massive
Yeah.
doing that. I
Let's
mean,
hope
having
so.
the void and the empty space makes it feel a little.
As it does, it kind of goes up and down, up and down. I think having a solid 4 stories would be preferable.
Right. They're gonna want every room to have a window, so
We just have
how they arrange the,
You lose a row of windows in the back.
and you're not gonna want your window probably right at the parking garage, so.
I know, every room I ever get has that view.
Yeah, but you're going
I'm
to
looking
like,
out over the roof.
you're going to like Singapore or something. I don't know where you're going. I'm just asking a question. maybe that's.
No, I think that's a great idea.
Solve a couple of.
It would, I like it. Another question, when you guys are looking at details and call outs, more details on the parking ramp would be great, because we're definitely very sparse there. For instance, when we went through with the county, you know, one of the things we wanted to look at is what's this going to look like from the various street elevations? Are, you know, do they have screening walls so you don't see the cars that are parked? So that kind of detail would be good too.
Yeah, screening wall.
Yeah, but how high they are, those sort of things. I mean, they had full detail that would show a car, so you can see from street level, do you see the cars? Again, remember that their street level, their top of their parking ramp is at the one sidewalk level, basically, so.
Even if you had a real world application, what would it look like, and what would the material, the metal mesh screen with, can't find the note, steel tube frame look like?
Or real samples like you had with the brick, that's always great.
Yeah,
too.
I wrote down that we need to get him to provide you more detail on those kind of things.
Yeah.
I mean, from the top of the cornices to whatever the lighting looks like, we need an up close piece of it, just like you have here on the sconce. So.
Or even if there is an example of a real world application like this that you know of that was in maybe the architect's mind, that is a photograph that the commission is, they can
Look
read
at
that
it.
a little bit
Okay.
easier maybe than.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because right now I'm envisioning more or less like black chain link fence, but maybe it's not.
No, it's
Yeah,
nothing
yeah,
like that.
no, I know,
It's,
and
industrial.
I'm slightly exaggerating,
Right,
but it would be
right.
nice to have some, some nice, drawings of that or some actual pictures of the material.
And, when it comes to the parking garage, keep in mind, it's really the city. We're just gonna build it for them.
Yeah.
So if you guys have particular issues about the parking garage,
Talk to Dave.
You saw how that goes.
Yeah.
Anything you want.
I thought you wanted to get this thing built.
well, that's what they said in the last meeting.
Yeah,
We're better off doing it than
So we have to approve the design. I don't care who brings us the design. But.
So is that,
So,
are
that's
those
fine.
things you think, I know you're on a timeline, but are those things you think you could get ready for? There's a meeting in December, we get close to the holidays and stuff, and we haven't talked about who may or may not be here.
Are you having a meeting? in
We're
December?
gonna wait until we get the city's MOU, which is gonna be 2 or 3 weeks.
You're talking about for financing. and all
Right,
that.
well, and plus making sure the city actually wants it. I mean, if we don't know for sure that we have an understanding of the city that they're gonna contribute land and we're gonna be able to do this, then, honestly, we're not gonna go spend another $20,000 in design.
The city's
So-
response
So
today.
timing is to get that.
The city, sorry. I cut you
Because
off.
I don't think they're going to be able to give you a definitive answer on some of your threshold questions without some of that information. I'm sure you've heard that here tonight. So there's a sort of a.
No, we understand that, but if we get the MOU from the city, which we've been, Sean's gone home, got to bed, but if we get the MOU from the city, as promised, within 2 or 3 weeks, which we anticipate,
Yeah.
then we'll know exactly what the city's position is. We've been told, but we want to see it in writing.
I appreciate what you're saying. I think from the commission's perspective, that's not germane to that. It's more the design elements. And you've asked them, hey, we need to know threshold question. We need an MOU, but we also need to know whether we can go 5 stories or not, or maybe there's there's another option.
Right. I think,
Well, we meet
The
again
take-
in
the
December and January, so I guess we're
Okay.
here.
well, the take I have coming away from today is, the response from the city was very much like Mr. Coleman's. Overall, if we can do the things and make the changes, everybody's in favor of trying to make this project go together. They want 300 parking spaces. Yeah, this is the way to help get the parking that the city needs. And so I think everybody wants to go that direction. It's just, as much as design is a serious piece, let's assume we can design it the way you guys want it. We still need to know the city wants to do it. So there's no sense designing it until we have that city piece, okay? Or at least we're moving farther down that path. So it might not be December, it could
Might
be
be a few
January's
months.
meeting. you know?
I hear you.
And that's sort of where I think we could be. But like I said earlier, I mean, all the suggestions I think are fairly doable. I mean, there's going to be some things that we can't do because of what Marriott tells us we can't do. But, you know, we've gotten them to agree to a lot of changes already, so we'll see where we can go with the rest of it.
What's the date in January?
It's always the 4th.
Yeah, well, December, because of the holiday, is the 19th.
Yeah, we won't make it.
So January would be the 4th, and
So we'll just
fourth Wednesday.
plan for January.
Fourth Thursday.
Yeah, it's the 4th Wednesday
Wednesday, yeah.
of the month, right?
Yep. So what is it, the 23rd?
And the deadline we blocked it.
That's gonna be a little bit before Christmas for
Deadline for the
that,
January docket would be.
because of the holidays. I mean, we could maybe go that week between Christmas and New Year.
Do you have to submit everything, or just tell you we're not down docket?
No, to submit us revisions based on what you're talking about. We're the same as you. I have staff doing holidays and vacation. I mean, we're not here. We gotta prepare things.
So it might be on February,
Oh.
which is fine.
Come
I know
on.
it's what it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Well, but
As much as-
February too. And we've been known to hold special meetings if we can schedule that in advance.
Okay.
Does anyone on the commission have any more questions? Thoughts, comments, concerns, anything to?
Yeah, I just have one question.
Please.
I'm sorry, nothing to do with the design. There's been a lot of comments tonight. Will there be a staff report or a comments report or something
No.
that's produced by?
No, we don't do that. We have notes. I guess our expectation is, I'm sure you guys took a lot of notes.
Yeah, we did. I just
Right
didn't
now.
know if there was something.
And then
that
what
you-
we'll normally do is work back and forth with an applicant on, to make sure if there's a question. We talked a lot about cornices, what did they say again, kind of thing.
Right.
And if we're unsure, we'll go back and we'll usually start with the chair and just,
Yeah.
this is what I think I heard.
From
How
a,
soon is the YouTube on?
Right now?
yeah, it's on live.
It's going right now.
So it'll be, well, I know it's.
It's right behind you.
Yeah, you can review.
So we could go.
Yeah,
review.
Yeah.
That's
You can
one.
be watching it right now,
Okay.
is what I mean, unless YouTube has an issue. Every once in a while, it takes 24 hours to load up. with
Well,
the
we're not gonna be
video.
looking at it
Yeah.
today.
Oh, no.
Have a couple drinks.
Oh,
I think Ms. Herron had a really good idea is that you're, to take some of these ideas and maybe have your design professional take those in and reflect them as the design professional, obviously with your input for cost and that kind of stuff. But that usually works pretty well, or have the.
Well, that's why I was asking about.
Have the architect watch YouTube.
No, we're gonna make them watch.
Well, that's
We're
what
gonna
I'm
make them
thinking.
watch YouTube. So that's what's gonna happen.
The last couple of them. Yeah,
So-
Well, I think clearly he did. I mean, 'cause that's a pretty strong start.
Ask him if he thinks the pedestal on the statue is too high.
Hey, I would like to thank the commission for seriously looking at this.
Yeah.
Give us really good feedback on the whole project. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate your interest in Delaware and, hope we can get everything together.
Something I forgot on my resume is I am a Buckeye by birth.
By birth
Okay.
only, by birth only.
This is not pertaining to us, but, just in the effort of trying to bring up some ideas on your building that wants to be a parking lot, and a porta potty and whatever.
Yeah.
What about if the city were to sell that?
I wouldn't go there, man.
Donate
I'm
the
all
money-
about
go
sell
there.
it, yes.
Donate the money to the city for the parking garage. Instead of getting 11 parking
Yeah.
spots, that $500,000 will buy you 30 parking spots.
I'm on
Just a
board.
thought.
And a historic house stays.
Are you guys in opportunities on here yet?
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your evening. What's left of it, yeah. There you go.
I assume the restaurants on Sandusky are closed.
Wednesday night, yeah. 10 o'clock's about the latest for most.
I may be up for,
Hamburger Inn if you
Oh,
want. to
Hamburger
local
Inn's 24
diner.
hours. You know that.
yeah, I may be up for another fifth-year reunion before we get to this.
Yeah, I believe so.
Thanks again,
Thank
guys.
you.
All right, so we've got a couple more things. Number 4 on the agenda, staff comments.
We have none this evening.
Perfect. Commission member comments and discussions. Did anybody have anything else they'd like to say after 2.5 hours? Or are we good? Joe needs some sleep, so noted. Next regular commission meeting, note the date change, December 19th, due to the holiday. We will know usually a couple weeks in advance if we're going to have one, right?
Anybody know if they're going to not be here?
I'll be here in December. I will say the fourth Friday of February is, and I don't know yet my schedule, but I'm going to be gone a week in February. I just don't know if it's going to be the fourth week or the third week.
And actually,
I should be here on the 19th. I'm in Indy on business that day, but I should be able to get back.
I'll be here in December.
We don't
January, I
have
might be
anything
gone.
as of now, right now.
Correct.
I am going to plan to not be here, but I can, if it causes any issues, I can make it. I'll plan it, so know that that's an option.
Yes.
Okay, any other business? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. You got a second? Motion and a second? We are adjourned.
Can I get clarity?
Yeah.